California Board of Behavioral Sciences meeting. My name is Chris Jones. I'm chairperson of the board. Before we convene, I'd like to remind everyone present that the board is a consumer protection agency charged with administering and enforcing the board's laws. Where protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. The Board of Behavioral Sciences will be holding this public meeting in person and via WebEx platform. I will announce when we are accepting public comment on the various issues. For each public comment period, we will first be accepting comments from the participants in the audience present in the room. Then the moderator will open the lines as appropriate so that the remote audience members can comment. Each commenter will have 2 minutes to comment. Moderator, would you please provide the audience instructions on how they may participate during the meeting at the appropriate times?
This is the moderator. When public comment is requested, I, the moderator, will turn on the WebEx question answer feature to facilitate this. Comments should be limited to the topic addressed during that specific agenda item. Instructions will be displayed on the screen each time, and members of the public may click on the question mark typically at the lower right-hand corner of their WebEx screen, type the word comment into a text box, and click send for the request to be recognized. You may also choose to raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon at the bottom of your computer's WebEx screen. Or if you're an audio-only participant, you may press *3 on your device to raise your hand. You'll be then given 2 minutes to speak with a 15-second warning, and at the end of that time, your microphone will be muted and we will move on to the next commenter. I believe that's all the instructions that I have.
Thank you. Members, during the roll call, please introduce yourself and let the public know whether you are a public or a licensed member. Christina, would you please call roll to establish a quorum?
Dr. Annette Walker.
Good morning. Present, public board member, pronouns she and her.
Kelly Ranasinga.
Present, public member, pronouns he, him.
Susan Friedman.
Good morning, Susan Friedman, public member.
John Sovek.
John Sovek, LMFT, pronouns he, him.
Wendy Strack.
Wendy Strack, public member, vice chair of the board.
Chris Jones.
Chris Jones, board chair, LEP member, sorry, and pronouns are he, him.
Justin Huff.
Justin Huft, he, him, MFT member.
Abigail Ortega.
Present, LCSW member.
Dr. Nick Boyd.
Nick Boyd, present, licensed professional clinical counselor, he, him.
And joining us via WebEx, Eleanor Uribe.
Present, Eleanor Uribe, LCSW member.
And we have a quorum.
Thank you, Christina. Before we begin, I want to remind all speakers to remain on topic when making comments on the agenda items. This is going to be a full 2 days, and I want to make sure that we can get to every agenda item. Additionally, we'll be taking a lunch break as close to 11:30 as we can. This will be depending on where we are with our hearings. So our next item on the agenda is suggestions for future agenda items. Are there any future agenda item suggestions from my fellow board members? All right. Are there any members of the audience that would like to suggest future agenda items? Okay, thank you. And are there any members of our remote audience that would like to suggest future agenda items? Moderator?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you'd like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants may raise their hand by pressing *3. All right, and seeing no requests for public comment, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you, moderator. Next item on the agenda is public comment for items that are not on the agenda. I will now open for public comments for items not on the agenda. As a reminder, the board may not discuss or take action on any matter raised during this public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda of a future meeting. Each commentator will have 2 minutes. Are there any comments from our board members? Are there any comments for those that are in the audience? Moderator, are there any comments from our remote participants?
This is the moderator, and I've opened up the Q&A feature for comments not on the agenda. If anyone would like to make a comment, please type comment in the Q&A box or use the raise hand feature. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you. We are going to move ahead to item number 8 on our agenda, which is the consent calendar. Consent calendar, possible approval of the February 29th, 2024 and March 1st, 2024 board meeting minutes. Does any member wish to remove or correct any items from the meeting minutes? Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
Actually, I do have some corrections. This is Christina Kitamura.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So on page 1, line 45, Crawford actually should be Alamo Latif. On page 8, line 20, vice chair should be chair. You are the chair. Those are all my corrections.
All right, thank you. Christine, do I have a motion to approve the minutes, approve the February 29th, 24 and March 1st, 2024 board meeting minutes with corrections?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. There any comments from our participants here in the meeting room?
Oh, yeah.
No, Christina, it would be vice chair because Wendy ran the last meeting. Is that?
That's correct.
That is true, but the correction was on the board member attendance where I listed Chris's absence and listed him as vice chair when he should be still the chair. Thank you.
They're coming for me. So no comments from our public. Any comments from our remote participants, moderator?
This is the moderator. If you would like to make a comment, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that feature?
Yes, thank you. Any additional board member comments? All right, thank you. Christina, would you please take the vote?
Dr. Annette Walker,
Yes.
Kelly Ramasinga,
Yes.
Susan Friedman,
Yes.
John Sovek,
Yes.
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Chris Jones,
Abstain?
Justin Huft,
Yes.
Abigail Ortega,
Yes.
Dr. Nick Boyd,
Yes.
Eleanor Uribe.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Wanna go? All right, so next we are going to hop down to item number 10, which is the election of the board chairperson and vice chairperson.
I can give a synopsis.
I'm sorry?
I can.
Oh, go ahead, Steve.
I'll introduce, and just a heads up for participants that have joined us for the petition hearings. We are going to begin at 9 o'clock, so that's why don't worry. We're not going to go through the whole board agenda before we get to petitioner hearing. So 9 o'clock will be the starting time. But just to kind of give you an overview, every year in May, we are required to elect a chairperson and a vice chairperson. And I have in the actual materials kind of given the description of what the responsibilities of a chairperson and a chairperson is. The vice chair really is a backup for the chairperson and would be kind of responsible for all those duties also. So being it's May, this is why we're holding the elections, and the really The chairperson's job is to work closely with me, so you would get to work with me. That's a pleasure, I'm sure. But no, just kidding. So what we'll do is during the voting process, the board chairperson will ask for nominations. Members, you're welcome to even nominate yourself, and each nomination must be seconded by another board member. Nominees have the option to decline their nomination, and then after all nominations have been made, then we will conduct a vote, and majority wins. And then we will go on to put nominations out for a vice chair. Does that make sense? Oh, public comment on each motion also. Okay. So,
All right. With that being said, I would like to throw my hat in the ring for one more year, if you guys are okay with that, and if somebody wants to jump in and take over, we can do that also. But I would like to continue. I feel like I've been doing a lot of great work with Steve, and I wanted to continue that journey for one more round.
I'll second that if
Thank you.
there are no objections.
Any other nominations?
comment?
Public comment? Any comments from our public here in the audience? Any comments from our remote participants?
This is the moderator. If anyone would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. All right, and seeing no requests, would you like me to close that feature?
Yes, thank you, moderator. All right, Christina, would you take the vote?
We'll start on this side. Dr. Nick Boyd,
Yes.
Abigail Ortega,
Yes.
Yes.
Chris Jones,
Yes.
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
John Sovek,
Yes.
Susan Friedman,
Yes.
Kelly Ranasinga,
Yes.
Dr. Annette Walker,
Yes.
Eleanor Uribe.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. I appreciate the confidence. And now, do we have nominations for vice chairperson?
Mr. Chair, if it's agreeable to the group, I would also like to continue in my current role.
I will second that. Any public comments from our audience? Any public comments from our remote participants?
This is the moderator. If anyone would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that feature?
Yes, thank you, moderator. Christine, would you take the vote?
Dr. Nick Boyd,
Yes.
Abigail Ortega,
Yes.
Justin Huft,
Yes.
Chris Jones,
Yes.
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
John Sovek,
Yes.
Susan Friedman,
Yes.
Kelly Ranasinga,
Yes.
Dr. Annette Walker,
Yes.
Eleanor Uribe.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. And now are we? We're going to pause for just a moment while we determine where we're going to be in our agenda. We appreciate your patience.
Mr. Chairperson, I would suggest maybe a break for 8 minutes, hopefully.
All right.
While we wait for the petitioner to come.
We will recess for 8 minutes until we get to 9 o'clock. Thank you. All right, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for your patience. We apologize for the technical difficulties. We're calling the meeting back to order at 9:11. At this time, we're going to move to our agenda item petitioner hearings. Today, the proceedings will be conducted by Judge Matthew Block. Good morning, Judge Block. The meeting is yours.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Jones, and good morning to everyone present. Ms. Temple, are you ready to go on record?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. We're on record before.
Judge, we're having a hard time hearing you. I apologize for interrupting.
All right. Is that better?
A little.
All right. Let's try this again. We're on record before the Board of Behavioral Sciences to review the petition for early termination of probation of Christine Lynn Durr. This is BBS case number 2002-02-00000149. Office of Administrative Hearings, case number 2024-040-928. Prior to going on record, we did establish that there is a quorum of the board present, but may I have all members of the board please identify themselves for the record, starting with the board member farthest to Mr. Jones's right.
Dr. Nick Boyd, licensed professional clinical counselor.
Abigail Ortega, LCSW member.
Justin Huff,
Excuse me,
licensed
Your
marriage
Honor.
and family therapist.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Yes?
I'm not hearing any of these people clearly, or either they need to speak louder. It's a little glitchy, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. Could we back up and have the board members start identifying themselves again?
Dr. Nick Boyd, licensed professional clinical counselor.
Abigail Ortega, LCSW member.
Justin Huft, marriage and family therapist.
Chris Jones, LEP member, chair.
Wendy Strack, public member, vice chair.
John Sovek, LMFT.
Susan Friedman, public member.
Kelly Singer, public member.
Dr. Annette Walker, public member.
Eleanor Uribe, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Uribe.
Eleanor Uribe, LCSW member.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Could you please repeat that?
Eleanor Uribe, LCSW member.
All right. Thank you for that. May I have the appearance of the Deputy Attorney General?
Anahita Crawford, Deputy Attorney General.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Crawford. And Ms. Durr, are you present? This is the matter of the petition for early termination of probation of Christine Lynn Durr. We experienced some technical difficulties. At the time that we did that, I was explaining the procedure that we're going to follow this morning. Ms. Durr, as I said, Ms. Crawford from the Attorney General's office will present your petition. She'll then give a brief overview of your case. You'll then have the opportunity to make a presentation under oath to testify and to call any witnesses that you choose in support of your petition. At the conclusion of the hearing, the board will go into closed session to deliberate whether or not to grant your petition. You won't have an answer today, but you'll have that at a date in the future, okay?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes.
All right. So, Ms. Durr, if you have any questions during the hearing, please let me know. I can't give you legal advice, but I may be able to help you understand, or I may be able to explain why we're doing or saying certain things, okay?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Ms. Crawford, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, please do.
Thank you. The petitioner was issued a licensed marriage and family therapist license on August 12th of 1999. That license expire on August 31st, 2024, unless renewed. An accusation was filed in February 26th of 2021, which alleged that the petitioner had been convicted of the crime of driving under the influence on October 22nd of 2020. She had a blood alcohol level of 0.21%. Petitioner was placed on probation for 5 years, ordered to enroll in a 9-month first offender program, and to have an ignition interlock device installed on her vehicle. Petitioner entered into a stipulated settlement with the board effective December 8th of 2021 to place her license on probation for 3 years with terms and conditions, including a psychological evaluation, psychotherapy, 2-semester units in substance use and abuse, dependency support program, abstaining from substances and testing, along with the standard terms and conditions of probation. Cost recovery was ordered, which has been paid in full, and petitioner is fully compliant with all aspects of her probation terms. 7 months remain on her 3-year probation term. Your Honor, I can move forward with our exhibits at this time.
All right, thank you.
Exhibit 1 contains the notice of hearing for today's hearing date. I would like to mark and introduce that into evidence at this time.
Any objection to Exhibit 1, Ms. Durr?
No, although, Your Honor, should I be able to see these? I've read them, so I have no concerns, but I don't see anything on my screen.
Ms. Crawford, Ms. Durr was provided copies of the exhibits?
Yes, I provided that to her yesterday.
Yes, I'm just, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to see something different on my screen, but yes, I did look them over and I did receive them. Thank you.
Do you have access to them now?
I could pull them up on my phone, but I don't think that I need to. I'm pretty familiar with all the documents and the issues. Yeah.
All right, so any objection to Exhibit 1, which is the notice of hearing?
No, no, Your Honor.
Exhibit 1 is admitted for jurisdictional purposes.
Exhibit 2 is the license history certification for the petitioner indicating her current license status. I'd like to mark and introduce this as Exhibit 2.
So, Ms. Durr, yesterday you received the copy of your license history certification.
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection to that being received in evidence?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Exhibit 2 is admitted for all purposes.
Exhibit 3 is a memorandum to the board by the Craig Zimmerman, who's a probation analyst. Would like to mark and introduce that at this time as Exhibit 3.
That's the memorandum dated April 3rd, 2024. Ms. Durr, you received that yesterday?
Yes, I did, Your Honor.
All right, had a chance to review it?
Yes, I did.
Any objection to it being received in evidence?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Exhibit 3 is admitted.
Exhibit 4 contains the petitioner's petition for early termination of probation. I'd like to mark and introduce that as Exhibit 4.
All right. Any objection to your petition being received in evidence, Ms. Durr?
No, Your Honor.
Right. Exhibit 4 is admitted.
Exhibit 5 from the petitioner in support of her petition for early termination of probation.
Excuse
I'd
me,
like to mark and
counsel.
introduce.
I'm sorry, you glitched out in the beginning. Can you please start over? Thank you.
Yes, Exhibit 5 is the attachment in support of petitioner's petition for early termination of probation. We would like to mark and introduce that as Exhibit 5.
Ms. Durr, you received a copy of that yesterday?
Yes, I did.
and reviewed it?
Yes, I did, Your Honor.
All right. Any objection to Exhibit 5?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 5 is admitted.
And Exhibit 6 is the order
Ms. Crawford, you cut out again.
in this matter. I'd like to mark and introduce that as Exhibit 6.
Ms. Crawford, could you repeat that? You cut out again.
Exhibit 6 is the decision and order, along with the underlying documents in this matter of the disciplinary proceedings. We would like to mark and introduce that as Exhibit 6.
Ms. Durr, you received and reviewed the underlying documents in this case?
Yes, I did, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Exhibit 6 is admitted.
We have nothing further to present.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Crawford. Ms. Durr, do you intend to call any witnesses this morning?
I do not, Your Honor.
All right. Do you wish to testify on your own behalf?
I would like to make a statement, I suppose, is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you'll give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Durr. Because you're appearing and representing yourself, I'm going to allow you to testify freely, just in the narrative. This is your opportunity to tell the board what you think it needs to know to decide the case fairly. The board is particularly concerned with the rehabilitation that you've participated in since the discipline against your license. When you're done, let me know.
Yes.
Mr. Crawford will likely have some questions for you, and then I'll open it up for the board members to ask questions of you as well, okay?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
With that, I am going to turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll start by saying that this is, let me start again and take a couple of deep breaths. This event has been incredibly humbling. This is a situation I never would have imagined myself in. And so I have taken all of this. This was a proverbial wake-up call to examine some issues in my life more deeply, including some things that I thought that I had a fairly good handle on. I've been a therapist for over 30 years in California. And I'm here because I feel like I have done all of the things that have been asked of me from the very moment that I was arrested. The most humiliating event in my life, and something that I've worked through and processed in great depth through both therapy, through regular meetings. I'm a regular participant in what's called Recovery Dharma, which is essentially an alternative to 12-step programs for those who have a more Buddhist orientation. Prior to this DUI, I have been a practitioner of yoga, mindfulness, meditation, and all of that. I have this cognitive dissonance, as I say, and then I was arrested for a DUI. In some ways, it's been fortunate that it happened at the time that it did, because I've met people from all over the country through those recovery meetings, people I would not have met, in part because I live in a relatively small community. And so access to meetings like that would be fairly limited. So I've been able to deepen my practice in terms of acting in alignment with my values. And what happened that night and the weeks preceding it, in terms of some life situations that I wish that I had handled more gracefully. I am grateful that I have had that opportunity to do that work. And I'm not one to usually speak, to give myself maybe outward credit, but I will say that I think that from the time that this happened, I kind of put my head up and like, what do I need to do? And what do I need to do next? And what do I need to do next? And I feel like I've done my due diligence in every way. It's again been very humbling. And when I went to court to ask that my criminal probation be terminated early, that was a very humbling experience. And the judge was, it was a very good experience overall. The judge was very kind, and I was in the courtroom with a wide range of people. And so in that way, it's been, it's challenged me to speak up in ways about the work that I've had to do. And while I've always been very compassionate and understanding and the kind of therapist that's very supportive, I haven't necessarily given myself that same kind of depth of support. I'm not sure if that sentence made any sense. So I'll just let it stand. The reason I brought up going to the court and asking for my criminal probation to be ended earlier. I was on criminal probation for 5 years. And because I've done all of the things, the judge asked me some what I called math questions. And I hadn't been prepared for that because I went and represented myself. And so just this week, I did some math. I've had 112 hours of therapy. I probably would have done some number of those anyway, because I'm a therapist who regularly has gone to therapy. I'm very aware of my family issues and my struggles with treatment-resistant depression. And but as a result of my probation through the Board of Behavioral Sciences, I've done 112 hours of therapy. I've gone to at least 248 meetings, more than that, but those are the number that have been required of me. I've been tested, done biological fluid testing 98 times. So every morning, usually at about 4 or 5 in the morning, when I happen to roll over and wake up, I check in and see if I'm required to test today. And so again, I've completed 98 tests. And then I don't really want to go over the fines and fees and all of that. It's been a very financially costly experience as well. So all that's to say that I'm here because I feel like I've done my due diligence. I guess I've learned my lesson. I'm sober. It has been very helpful to realize that while alcohol was sometimes something that I used, like many of my clients for sure, and some of my friends, to kind of take the edge off at the end of the day. And having been sober for 5 years, almost 5 years, I still deal with my my tendency toward depression. And so in the last 5 years, I've had another round of TMS and continue to regularly take medication. And I don't necessarily feel super comfortable telling a room full of strangers. On the other hand, it is a reality and something that this event led me to really more deeply explore how much of this is biological, how much of this is family trauma, some of my history. And the answer is it's some of all of that, which is what I tend to find with many of my clients as well. So I could probably speak for a long time, but I'm gonna just pause and let maybe some questions guide my testimony, my presentation.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Durr. Ms. Crawford, questions for Ms. Durr?
Oh, I think she's muted. Yeah.
On mute.
Thank you. I know that you've said you've done everything that's been asked of you, as well as just determine what the next steps are that you have to take. Can you walk us through everything that you have done to rehabilitate from this arrest and what you've described as one of the most humbling experiences of your life?
Let me make sure I understand the question. My answers can tend to be lengthy. You want me to walk through all the steps from the time of the arrest? Is that correct?
The towards rehabilitation. So if you've taken any courses, if you've what you've gone through with therapy, and I'll walk you through that. But I want to know first about any courses you had to take as a result of the arrest.
Sure. Yes. I'll go through the order of things that were required immediately. That fairly immediately, I had an interlock device installed on my car and had that for a year. Fairly quickly, I enrolled in a 9-month treatment program, and because it was in the midst of the pandemic, I did that virtually and did that through Janus of Santa Cruz. There it is. So that was weekly group meetings and 4 individual sessions. So a 9-month program. I started going to the Dharma recovery meetings. They weren't required at that point, but I just started to do those. I've also continuously gone through and started to do more regular meditation courses online, because during the pandemic, it was fairly isolating for many of us. Let's see. I was required to do community service in lieu of jail time. So I did volunteer work at a local women's recovery center. And yes, 2 semester courses. So now I'm getting into the requirements through the BBS. I did the equivalent of 2 semester courses in recovery, and specifically did those in around issues around women and substance abuse. Did the biological fluid testing. I completed a psychological evaluation with a local psychiatrist. And as I mentioned earlier, I have been in weekly therapy, with the exception of vacations for myself or my therapist, over the last 2.5 years that I've been on probation with the BBS. I've done individual psychotherapy. I think that covers it.
Okay, thank you. At the time of your arrest, you had a very high blood alcohol level at a 0.21%. Have you identified what led to that incident and the amount of alcohol you ingested?
I've certainly identified and worked through some of the events leading up to that night. It's still a bit puzzling at how high my alcohol level was, because I do remember the night. What I'll say is that I knew that in retrospect, it's not surprising that I was in denial about how poorly I was doing emotionally. I had gone through a fairly significant loss of a friendship, a very significant friendship, and in a way that an experience that hadn't happened in that particular way ever in my life. And so it brought up some unresolved issues around family and attachment issues and other things that I've dealt with in therapy, and things that I would not have gotten to at that depth of level, at that level. You know, I certainly would never invite this experience ever or wish it on someone, but it was turned into an opportunity to do that deeper work. I think I'm in a better place. Yeah, I'm in a better place than I was as a result of it. I hope that answers your question.
It does. You also mentioned that there were some elements of denial. Were you drinking more frequently leading up to this incident, or heavily leading up to the incident?
I was definitely binge drinking. I was drinking more than I had normally, not to the point of intoxication at that level. And honestly, I rarely, let me just answer your question. in retrospect, yes, I was. And an element of this particular friendship is that we were beer drinkers together. And as that friendship kind of blew up and other things in my social circle were disrupted, it was, I don't know, on some level, it feels a little silly to say like somebody broke up with me, a friendship, but it happened in a way that at my age and this time in my life was very disturbing. And so I did drink some more during that month before the DUI. I was not driving. I was tending to drink at home. And so that was, yeah, I was sliding into a much deeper depression. And so I was drinking at home. And again, in retrospect, I should have stayed home that day. I decided to do a social thing, and then it was with people who were part of that social circle. Oh, this feels like a therapy session. Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
I've resolved it, but it's hard to talk to with I don't know who's all in the room.
Understood.
Yeah.
And looking back, why do you think that with someone with your years of experience, why did you handle that adversity in your life in the way you did with alcohol, as opposed to reaching out in a more productive way to resolve those issues?
It's an excellent question. The best way that I've come to understand it is that before I was a social drinker and occasionally would maybe drink at home and have a couple of drinks at the end of the day. And it was just a fine line between that and feeling kind of devastated by the events that were happening in my social life. And so I didn't reach out in the ways. I can tend to be fairly independent. And so I didn't reach out in the ways that I certainly do now and would now. And that has roots in childhood issues. Figuring things out on my own. And so this experience has led me to have a much more deeply rooted connection to people, including people that I don't really know very well, who are in my what we call our Dharma group, people who are in the meetings that I drop into. And I know enough about their life to know that we're there with a shared path. But much like a 12-step group, I don't necessarily know, and in part because they're all over the country. They're in Seattle, they're in Denver.
Are you still on criminal probation?
No, I'm not.
When did that terminate?
In February. The document was part of Craig would have the document. It was February 20th, 21st.
Okay, that was this year?
Of this year, yes.
And what benefit did you gain from the DUI program, the 9-month DUI program that you participated in?
I'm only pausing because I'm shifting from the sense of community I've gained from the Dharma recovery. The 9-month program through Janus, there was definitely a psychoeducational part. And so it was interesting to be on the other side, to be learning about, different psychological concepts that I was familiar with, but to be on the other side. And it really was very, I'm not somebody who holds myself above anybody really, but it was leveling in the wide range of people who were in the room. And because we were on Zoom, I mean, literally there were some people who were coming to these meetings intoxicated and having the the facilitator have to handle that. So that was interesting from a therapist perspective to watch that whole wide range. And then people who had tragic consequences, who had killed somebody. And so I guess the long story short is it was very humbling, and this is a very important thing to get a handle on. And the numbers of people who it's easy to think that this can't happen to us, I guess. This can't happen to me. And the individual sessions, the individual time was especially helpful just because then we could hone in more on my specific situation.
Oh,
And
what
I don't get
individual
short
sessions?
answers. Part of the 9-month program is that there were 4 individual sessions
Oh, okay.
with the drug and alcohol counselor. And in those cases, I was able to focus in even more on my specific circumstances.
Who runs the individual sessions?
They're certified drug and alcohol counselors.
Let me switch gears for a bit. Where do you work?
I have a private practice in Monterey.
How long have you been in private practice?
1999. That's math again. I want to say about 30, 25, 26 years. I was a therapist in Wisconsin prior.
Did you take any breaks from your practice while you were dealing with some of the fallout from the arrest?
Did I take any breaks from my therapy practice? No, I did not. No.
How were you able to handle having dealing with everything you were dealing with as far as processing your own issues and also maintaining the integrity of your practice?
Excellent question. I immediately started seeing the therapist that I was working with at the time more frequently. I reached out to a colleague and talked to this person, to my colleague regularly. And between the two of them, I felt that I was able to compartmentalize this experience, my own personal experience, and still function at what I think is a high level.
You've also mentioned treatment-resistant depression. Can you describe what that is?
Yeah. It's essentially the type of treatment, the depression that responds to, rather than speaking clinically, let me describe my experience. I think going back into my childhood, I probably was experiencing depression, probably middle school, and grew up in a family where that was not, mental health issues were not acknowledged. And as a emotionally sensitive, intuitive child, that there was a mismatch, let's just say. So in college, for the first time I went to therapy, was on medication, and until even recently have been on several different medications. They often help for a while, and I could tell you all kinds of things about it. I guess the short answer is that treatment-resistant depression is things work for a while, and then as one of my nurse practitioners says, sometimes the medications kind of poop out. And then you switch to another medication. And it's thought to be about 25 to 33% of people who are diagnosed with depression end up with essentially a diagnosis of treatment-resistant depression. The symptom that most gets my attention is when I start losing interest in the things that I usually love to do. And that's always a wake-up call for me to look at what's the next, whether it's an increase in a dose of medication, or, for example, I've had several rounds of transmagnetic stimulation, TMS, and that's been helpful. In the last, it was about 2 years ago that I had another round. The local hospital now has them that available as treatment.
And so what you described, is that just something that is a lifetime's work for you, making sure you're aware of your oncoming symptoms and receiving whatever treatment you need?
That's absolutely, yeah. What I talk the people that I choose to talk to about, and I'm actually fairly an open book about this. Like this is not something that is rare. That I function at a very high level. Some of my friends, if I'll say that I suffer from depression, I think that they don't really understand it. Just like somebody who's a type 1 diabetic can't really explain like what it's like to be a type 1 diabetic. But I know how to manage yeah.
With regards to recovery Dharma,
Yes.
what are some of their the hallmarks of their philosophy when it comes to sobriety?
Again, I don't want to take up too much time. Essentially, it's based on the Buddhist teachings of the Four Noble Truths. And I don't call myself a Buddhist, but I'm very much a student of Buddhism because I find it very psychologically helpful. And the fundamental principles are that there's suffering in life, that we're not going to get out of life without suffering. And the second teaching is that we, as humans, we make it worse because we don't want to suffer. The third teaching is that there's a way through this, that we don't have to keep suffering in the way that we're suffering. And then the fourth teaching is, here are the ways to be more mindful. Here's the ways forward. And that's where the teaching about mindful, wise, correct seeing, correct insight, actions, livelihood, speech, being mindful of how we are in the world and clarifying our values. And so the Dharma recovery is based on those teachings. And the meetings start with reiterating those Four Noble Truths. And often the meetings are either about a reading or are specifically about one of the Eightfold Paths. And I would say that for certain, my wise actions, knowing how to handle whatever's coming up moment to moment, day to day, being mindful about how I respond as opposed to react. That would be an example of how I often use the support of the meetings, is living in alignment with those values. Not sure if that makes sense, but
well, maybe you can expand on how those teachings help you maintain your sobriety.
Well, let me give you an example. If one of the things that I've worked through is why the particular relationship situation was so deeply disturbing to me. And through my work in therapy and through these recovery meetings and my meditation practice and my yoga practice and all of the things that I do, I've come to the deeper awareness of how I avoid conflict. And there are certain conflicts that are easy for me to handle, certain things that I just avoid. And in friendships, I will often swallow slights. I'll go along with things that if I were using wise speech, I would have a way to more gracefully say, when you do that actually is hurtful. And had I been able to do that more consistently, and I do that more consistently in my dearest friendships now, and practice in recovery, talking about like, what are some of the things that we often just go with, but do sting. And if we don't find a way to process that, then we will often use things like shopping, food, alcohol, drugs to cope with the little things. And the little things often accumulate into bigger things. And so in my recovery, I've been practicing, like, when there's something that needs to be said, I sit with the discomfort about, why am I resisting this? What's coming up for me? What's my fear? And then I'll often mentally rehearse, and with the support of my people, often practice how and why do I take the actions that I need to take. And then sometimes the way that this works is that even processing it with people, the intensity of it lessens. It's like, it's easier to just say, hey, don't do that. Again, not sure if that makes sense, but
That's,
yeah.
um,
It's still hard to see this person out in the world, like the person that has so deeply hurt me. I've absolutely moved to the place of like letting it go and forgiving, but it's not completely healed. And so I work with like how other people in my life, I treat with great care, and clarifying like what friendship means to me, and not letting small things slide and build into bigger things.
what does your support network look like?
I have dear friends I do volunteer work in the animal rescue world. So I have dear friends we share that connection. The colleague who I was first, who knows the most about this current situation, my Dharma recovery group, my yoga, the people that I practice yoga with. So I've got kind of different groups of people.
I've seen in your petition packet a letter from Diane Elwin and also one from Dr. Shane Hill.
Correct.
Well, what do each of those individuals do for you?
Shane Hill is a psychologist, and when I got the DUI, he was my therapist at the time. I'd been working with him on and off for a couple of years, off because he had a cancer diagnosis, so we had our therapy on hold for a while he went through treatment. I saw him weekly, and that was well before the DUI. I regularly go to therapy, both for consultation, to work better with clients, and also to work on my own issues. So I continued to work with him after the DUI, and saw him more regularly after the DUI. And then it became clear that I needed to see somebody who was specifically going to work with me around the requirement to see somebody weekly, and to be honest, somebody who had more expertise in quote unquote addiction. And then also somebody who took my insurance.
At any time were you seeing both Dr. Hill and Miss Elwin at the same time?
No, that's not standard practice.
Okay.
No, Shane referred me to Diane. He thought that I'd be in fair. Oh, the other aspect is that Diane has a practice called EMDR. And so I was able to do some EMDR treatment with her, both around the events before and after the DUI.
What did the EMDR treatment address?
The EMDR is often used for trauma. The first time that I did some EMDR was literally about the night of the arrest, because I remember the night and it was incredibly upsetting. And then what EMDR often helps you kind of track back to, like, what other things in your life that, are similar? How did you cope in other ways? And so with Diane, I've continued to use EMDR around earlier life experiences, let's say. I would prefer not to talk about my earlier traumas, but to heal on a deeper level some of those earlier traumas that are like not giant T traumas, like small or medium letter traumas, but significant.
And you've also got a character reference letter from Helen Grady. Can you tell us about who Helen Grady is and why she wrote this letter?
Helen's my colleague, and she's the person that I talked to and leaned on and consulted with. She's both a friend and a colleague. And she's the person
individual I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead and ask your question.
Is she the individual you mentioned as part of that group of support system for you?
Absolutely, yes.
And you also have an individual by the name of Catherine Johnson who wrote you a letter. Can you tell us about who she is?
Catherine's psychiatric nurse practitioner. Dear, I haven't seen her for several years because she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she's still struggling with breast cancer. She prescribed my medication for over 15 years. This is a very kind, lovely, she's been very helpful in my life in terms of helping me understand and deal with my issues with depression. And so I'm partly emotional about it because it's been hard to find somebody. I haven't found somebody else that I've got a psychiatrist. He's young and he gets the job done, but I miss Kathy, and I referred many of my clients to her. She's just a very lovely human being.
I do see that she wrote this letter in 2021.
Right.
What was the purpose of this letter at that time period?
That was in support of when I was before the settlement with the BBI, before the determination about what was going to happen, like the terms of my probation.
And you said you have not had any contact with her in the last couple of years?
Not professionally, personally, I followed up to find out how she's doing. But I didn't ask her to write another letter. Like she retired, she's dealing with breast cancer.
That's it. Thank you. I appreciate your time. No further questions.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. I will now open it up to the board members, and I will just go down my list alphabetically. I'll start with Dr. Boyd.
Thanks, Your Honor. I actually had to step away from the bathroom, so I'm gonna have to recuse myself from questions at this time.
All right. Ms. Friedman?
Good morning. Thank you very, very much for coming and sharing your story with us. I have one question, and that is, since you've practiced for almost 30 years, I would assume in that time that people would come to you with similar problem, that they got a DUI and they didn't know how it happened and they didn't know how to deal with it. Before you got your DUI, did you change the way you dealt with that with your clients, with your patients, after you had your own personal experience?
I've only had two people who've actively had DUIs over all my years who've had DUIs while I was working with them. I've certainly worked with people who had had DUIs in their past. I've thought a lot about this issue because I do have clients who use alcohol and since the pandemic, use alcohol to a problematic degree. So I would absolutely say that my experience with the DUI wouldn't say it's changed my approach, only in that I maybe lean in just a little bit more about what are some other ways that you can handle what's going on in your life. You know, balancing that, like, I don't tell people what to do. I don't give them advice. I'm not their parent, but I am also balancing with, I see you suffering. And does this solve the problem? And the answer is always, it doesn't solve the problem. It just makes it go away for a little while. And so then we move more quickly to what are some other ways to work with the issues that you're struggling with. And of course, that's very, from person to person, very individual.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. Mr. Huff?
Justin Huff, thank you. Thank you very much for being here and participating. I know this is not an easy discussion. I also just have one relatively short question. In your written documentation, you talk about the successful treatment of treatment-resistant depression. It seems to indicate that these symptoms are not here anymore. Can you talk a little bit more about why you are choosing to maintain your abstinence?
I'm just pausing because I'm connecting the two. As I said earlier, it's been interesting to see that I certainly always wondered if using alcohol is a depressant. And it's been interesting because I suppose I had hoped that with my abstinence that it would automatically like cure my depression or something, and that hasn't happened. So
Mr. I'm sorry, the court reporter is trying to get my attention.
Yes, Your Honor, I'm sorry. I couldn't interrupt earlier because I was muted. I didn't hear any of Mr.'s answer to the last question. Thank you.
okay, I'll try to be briefer. I choose to be abstinent because it feels better. It just feels better. And my treatment-resistant depression, I think Kathy has helped me understand that this may be something that I'll live with and I can live with. It really, in some ways, isn't a big deal because I have my mindfulness practice. I have my day-to-day practices of it is how it is. I don't have to make it worse. And alcohol did not make it better. And so I don't need to do anything to make my life worse. And alcohol just isn't a part of the equation.
This is Justin Huft. Thank you very much for your open, insightful, comprehensive answers. That's all.
All right, thank you. Mr. Jones?
Good morning. Thank you for being here and testifying for us. Do you have a sobriety date?
I have the day that I choose to celebrate my sobriety because it's my birthday. So August 14th, 2019.
Can you give me some clarification or understanding? Why did you choose your birthday? First, what's the significance of that for a sobriety date?
The DOI was on July 20th, so it's close enough. It's when I started going to the meetings. And so that to me, that was like maybe just a quirky thing about my personality. Like I don't count the numbers of days, but I have been sober since July 20th, 2019, but I say August 14th because that's my birthday.
Thank you. No further questions. Thanks.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Ms. Ortega?
Hi, Ms. Sir. Thank you for your testimony today. So have you been tempted since since the July 2019 incident where you say you stopped drinking and yeah.
Have I been tempted to drink?
Yes.
I've certainly in the early months thought about drinking and have had to navigate being in social environments where other people are drinking. But the consequences are just too high. And with this period of time of sobriety, it's just not an option. It's just not appealing or an option.
And can you say a little bit more what kept you from drinking?
Kept me from drinking. Well, all the pieces that are in place that make you not drink are the guardrails to getting to the point of like, yeah, it's not worth it. Like when you have an interlock device on your car, you can't drink or you can't go anywhere, right? And so did I ever think about drinking? Sure, but was I going to drink? Absolutely not. Like, and then the biological fluid testing, like, I knew I was going to be tested, and now it's been long enough that it's just not an issue. Like I'm just not drinking, and so I don't have to worry about getting in my car or about anything because I'm just not a drinker. Yeah, but early on in recovery, like in this process, the whole thing is set up for you to, have to not drink, and certainly people don't succeed with that. Like I said at the beginning, I feel like I've really done my due diligence on my recovery and learning that this is what I need to do for myself.
And so is there an equivalent to a sponsor in the Dharma recovery program?
It's less formal than a sponsor. I have certainly several people that are more on my speed dial, that the people that I've formed more of a bond with that I can talk to outside of meetings.
Okay. And my last question is, what are some short-term or long-term goals that you have to maintain your motivation and focus and sobriety?
I intend to continue with my meditation practice, my recovery meetings. I intend to continue with therapy.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
My life is in a pretty good place. I plan to continue to do what I'm doing. I can plan to ride my horse and walk my dogs. And yeah, I don't mean to be glib. My life is in a good place.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ranasinghe?
Thank you, and thank you for being here, ma'am. I have no further questions.
All right, Mr. Sovek?
Thank you so much for your open and honest testimony, and I have no questions at this time.
Ms. Stratt?
Thank you for being here. The question I had, I think you've mostly answered, was more about sort of do you have a plan in place? Like if you were ever to experience a relapse, do you have a plan in place for dealing with that?
Absolutely. Like I have people that I can call now, and I would call now. And before I was a silent sufferer. If I was dealing with, before the DUI, it took a lot for me to reach out, and now it takes much less. I reach out about issues, and some of my friends will laughingly say like, no, this isn't a burden.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ms. Uribe?
Hello, thank you for your testimony. So I had some questions. You had done a couple of women in substance abuse courses, and I was curious, what did you take out that maybe stood out for you personally?
Yeah, I think similar to what I was just saying is the being, I see it so often with my clients and even some of my friends that we don't want to be a burden to other people. And so often swallowing, like whether that's with alcohol, drugs, or food, swallowing our feelings, minimizing our feelings. And so balancing the being a caretaker and more readily asking for help in a way that's in alignment with me, like yeah, that's like having the people that I know are going to be able to meet me there. Like I I know for some people just talking helps. It helps me to have, you know, my friend Helen, who I feel like we can just get right there. Like, ugh, there's something deeper. It's not just about like the surface of I'm complaining about the things that are happening, but underneath it, like, what is that? And I finally have more of that. And the classes help me kind of just reiterate some of the gender politics. That's not the right word, but the gender differences. That's it, the gender differences. And that's not to say that men don't have some similar dynamics at all. But as a woman, just resonating with, you know, just some of the different stressors about living in the world as a female, and some of the, and then literally like how we process alcohol is different. Like the courses really focused in a lot about the biological aspects, the racial disparities. Like none of it was happy. Yeah, but it also reiterated like effective treatment programs are comprehensive. And while I didn't choose to be in this particular program, I can say that that is what's been helpful.
I'm curious, well, it may be a given, but had you considered doing like an AA meeting or anything like that?
I didn't do AA meetings because I found Dharma recovery fit more with my values and my beliefs.
And then it seemed like maybe at the time when you did your, I guess the different classes, it seemed like a lot of them were online, or did you mention a lot about calling people or speed dial? I'm curious about if you have many that are people that are in person that you can talk with or go to as supports or even maybe accountability.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the classes still. I do have my in-person people. Like the Dharma recovery people are mostly online. And so in terms of that recovery program, there's one person locally that I'm very close to, and my therapist. We share the similar. And then honestly, I didn't mention this earlier, but I'm a podcast addict. And so there are a lot of amazing podcasts. And so I know those are not, you know, the same, but in person, Helen is a great resource, my therapist.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
All right, and Dr. Walker.
Thank you, sir, very much. Mr. I appreciate your testimony this afternoon. Just a couple of follow-up questions. I'm going to segue from some of the other board members' questions when we refer to your probation compliance. And my question would build on what I have seen repeatedly in the letters and what I heard from you is the term that you're functioning at a high level, despite the trauma, despite the bouts with depression. So I just don't want to be redundant, but I want to be sure that I'm clearly hearing from you the reason why you're able to function at such a high level during what I just mentioned, with what you're suffering with and from. How are you able to continue to function at such a high level where the threat to public safety is not there?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay, let me see if I can state it again. You've mentioned that you're able to navigate and manage your depression, the trauma from this experience, the DUI, correct?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. the emotional duress from the rejection, if you will, for lack of words, or the friendship that was taken from you, if you will, that has caused you emotional duress, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm building on those experiences that you have shared with us. And I'm asking, how are you able to continue your practice and function at such a high level with those things? You've mentioned the work, the courses that you've done. You've mentioned several things, so I'm not asking you to repeat that. I guess I'm asking for clarity in that you're saying that you're able to function at such a high level in your practice because of those things, because of that support network, because of the work that you've done. Is that what's helping you to function at such a high level?
Yeah, yeah, it's every day is like my practice is every day there's the opportunity to look at what's going wrong, and I see all that. I feel it sometimes too deeply, and I choose over and over again, over and over again. And some days it's over and over again, and other days it's like today's a fine day. Today's a fine day. But I've learned how to the mindfulness teacher John Kabat-Zinn, he was probably quoting somebody else, but you can't stop the waves, but you can learn how to surf.
Mhm.
And I've learned how to surf. Not metaphorically, paddleboarding is more my speed, but I've learned how to surf. And I think I do that pretty well most of the time. And I've got the support system when I feel like I'm a little shaky, but yeah.
So looking towards the immediate future here, I believe the date for your end of probation, if I'm correct, is August 31st of this year. Is that right?
No, it's December 8th of this year. So I've got 6.5 months.
Okay. Okay. I was thinking it was sooner than that. Okay. So 6-month window here. So you're saying you would continue what you just mentioned as vehicles to help you continue to work at such a high level.
Absolutely.
Okay. And looking at your probation compliance, I can see that you're very much in compliance with your probation. But there's a couple of things that say that you are continuing, and that is the psychotherapy. Is that true?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. So you plan on continuing that
Yes.
even beyond the 6 months?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. And I also see the dependency support program that you currently attend that twice a week. So you plan on continuing that
Yes. Mm-hmm.
beyond the 6 months?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess then my last question would be your why for coming today to petition for early termination when we have a 6-month window here to continue these things, and you plan on continuing them after them. Why are you petitioning for early termination? Why not just stick with it?
Um, I intend to stick with all the things that I'm doing. I feel like I'm at risk of sounding defensive now. Like, this is expensive. This is expensive. And I'll do it if you decide that, every day. I mean, I've taken my drug testing kits with me to Maui. I've been on camping trips. I've had to find Wi-Fi at Starbucks and do testing at the Starbucks with the little things in my mouth. Totally humiliating. And I'll do it, and I've done it, and I feel like I've kept my head up and done all the things. I've did the math. It's only another $4,000 if I don't. It's $4,000 that I could pay off my mortgage or. So I'm sorry.
There's no need to apologize. I I appreciate you answering my question so authentically and honestly. It's really appreciated. Thank you, Mr.
Ms. Crawford, any follow-up questions?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Durr, I join the members of the board in thanking you for your testimony, your honesty, and the candor with which you've discussed the rehabilitation that you've participated in. I know the board appreciates that as well, as does Ms. Crawford. As I said earlier, the board will go into closed session at the end of the day to deliberate, and you'll be notified of that decision in a date in the future, okay?
Thank you, Your Honor, and thank you to the board.
All right. Best of luck to you, Ms. Durr.
Thank you very much.
With that, that matter is submitted. The record is closed and we're off the record. Ms. Temple, I'm sorry. I have 10:48 as our end time.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
And our page count.
Yes, sir. That would be 50 pages, 50 pages.
Okay. Thank you. With that, Mr. Jones, do you want to move on to the second petition?
Yes, Your Honor, but let's take a break. Give everyone a minute to stretch. Let's take a 10-minute break, return at 11 o'clock.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Ms. Gant, can you hear me?
I can, Your Honor.
Good morning. Do you prefer to be addressed as Ms. Gant or Ms. Gant Schaefer?
Gant, because my husband's deceased.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Is, are you finished?
All right, thank you. We'd like to call the meeting back into order. Judge Block, it's all yours.
All right. Ready, Ms. Temple?
Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. We're on the record before the Board of Behavioral Sciences to review the petition of Renita Yvette Gant. This is BBS case number 2002-019-002-496. Office of Administrative Hearings, case number 2024-040-929. I'd ask that the members of the board please identify themselves for the record, starting with Dr. Boyd.
Dr. Boyd, licensed professional clinical counselor.
Abigail Ortega, LCSW.
Justin Huft, marriage and family therapist.
Chris Jones, LEP member, chair.
Wendy Strack, public member, vice chair.
John Sovak, LMFT.
Susan Friedman, public member.
Kelly Singer, public member.
Dr. Annette Walker, public member.
Eleanor Uribe, LCSW member.
All right, thank you. And may I have the appearance of the Deputy Attorney General?
Anahita Crawford, Deputy Attorney General. And I apologize, Your Honor, may I have just one minute?
Sure.
Thank you.
We'll go off record, Ms. Temple.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Temple, have you ever petitioned like this before? Have you ever filed a prior petition? Ms. Gant?
Yes, Ms. Gann, I thought you said Ms. Templeton.
I'm sorry.
Your Honor. No worries.
All right. So procedure, as you may be aware, is Ms. Crawford is going to present your petition, provide an overview of your case. You'll then have the opportunity to testify under oath. You'll also have the opportunity to call witnesses if you choose. The board is particularly concerned with the rehabilitation that you've participated in since the discipline against your license. And the board does have the benefit of reading your petition packet, okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
If you have any questions during the hearing, let me know. I can't give you legal advice, but I may be able to help explain why we're doing or saying certain things, okay?
Okay, thank you.
When you're done testifying, Ms. Crawford may have some questions for you, and I allow the board members to ask questions as well. All right, with that, Ms. Crawford, are you ready to proceed?
I am, Your Honor. I did provide, or I attempted to provide the petition packet to Ms. Gant at the email address I had on her petition. That email got returned to me as undeliverable, so I don't believe Ms. Gant has the petition packet.
So how do you suggest we proceed?
I can see if there's another email address she'd like me to send it to, or I can try to screen share.
Mr. Jones, do you have a preference?
No, whatever is easiest for the petitioner.
Ms. Gant, do you have an email address you can provide to Ms. Crawford?
Yes, it's Y as in yellow, V as in Victor, ETTEGANT8 as in figure 8.
Just one second. I wasn't ready when you started. Can you slow down for me and start over?
Wait, well, 1 second. Do we, Ms. Gant, do you want to have your email in public record?
It's fine. I mean, the board knows everything about me. It's fine.
This also includes the people that are watching and listening to the meeting. So it won't just be us, but it'll be the public that will have access to your email if you deliver it in this manner. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, she gave me another option to screen share. That could be an option as well, but
Okay.
yeah,
Would that be more comfortable for you?
yeah, I'm an open book.
All right, Ms. Crawford, why don't we opt for screen sharing? So Ms. Gant, there are 8 exhibits. And what we'll do is Ms. Crawford will share her screen to give you a chance to look at the exhibit. And then I'll ask if you have any objections to the exhibit, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Actually, we're going to have a staff member email Ms. Crawford the actual email address so we can do it that way.
Okay.
And they're going to do that right now.
Does that make sense? We're going to have a staff member email the
documents.
Okay. I'll check.
Yeah, the petition packet over.
Would you like me to reiterate my email address?
No, I think we have it.
All right, so I'm going to want to give her some time to review the exhibits because it's over 150 pages, I think. Ms. Gant, how long would you like to review the exhibits?
These are the exhibits that I submitted.
Well, there's, the first one is the notice of hearing. Then there's a copy of your license and registration history certification. There's a memo to the board. There is your petition, the documents in support of your petition, the psychotherapy information sheet, supervised practice information sheet. So in that sense, most of them are the documents, I believe, that you've presented, and then a copy of the underlying disciplinary record.
Okay.
Do you have access to your email?
Yes, I can check now.
Okay.
Give me a sec. I don't have it as of yet. Oh, this is from Craig, Mr. Craig.
Given the description of the exhibits that I just provided, can you give me an estimate of how long you would want to review them before we go forward?
I don't see an attachment for the exhibits, maybe like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but I don't see the attachment. It says, please find attached the exhibit packet we intend to. I don't see the package. I don't see no attachment here. This one, so let me see, let me close this.
Can we go back to the screen share option until she receives the emails, Judge? Would that be okay?
Well, my concern is that if we're doing this like in a hybrid format, I don't know that that's going to be beneficial to Ms. Gant.
Because you wouldn't have had time to look at the,
Yeah.
right. Gotcha.
Yes, Ms. Gant.
Yes, we can proceed forward.
Do you have a copy of the exhibits?
No, I don't have a copy, but pretty much everything should be there.
I appreciate that, but I do want you to at least know what these exhibits are when I ask you if you object to them.
Okay, let me try.
This is Sabina, legal counsel for the board. I'm in the hearing room. Can you clarify, Ms. Gant, the email you just received did not have the attachments? Is that correct? Because I can go let staff know that. And we can also move to the next petitioner. So once you receive it, you can have time to review it, and we can get to your petition after the other petitioner.
No, it's not attached.
Okay, and that's an email he just sent. Is that correct? It didn't have the attachments?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so we will let staff know, and we will get that to you. In the
I'm sorry.
meantime.
I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I do see an attachment, but where's the attachment at? Is it open? It says attachment. I see the attachment, but I'm having difficult. Okay, let me try this. Usually a download.
Ms. Gant, I think what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that you have the documents. We're going to give you the time to review them, and then we're going to hear your case after the next case, we'll see you after lunch. Just
What time should I come back?
I would say probably, well, I mean, maybe about 1:30.
Okay, so I'll probably have to do it by phone because I'll be in the field. Would that be okay?
That's completely up to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks a lot.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, Judge, let's move on to the next petitioner if we can.
Sure.
Thank you.
Pull that up. And can somebody let me know, is it Brosier, the pronunciation?
Right. Yes, that's the correct pronunciation.
All right, and is that you, Dr. Perosier?
Yes.
All right, good morning. And
This is the moderator. Dr. Perosier, do you mind getting a little bit closer to your microphone? You're just a little quiet. I want to make sure everyone can hear you.
Is this better?
A little bit. Is everyone able to hear her?
Yes, I
can hear you, Dr. Perosier.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
I apologize, Ms. Temple. My name is Carolyn Park, counsel for Dr. Perosier.
all right. Ready to go on record, Ms. Temple? Ms. Temple?
Can you hear me, Your Honor?
Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry. I couldn't hear you there for a moment. I was just checking. We're not on the record.
No, I was just asking, are you ready to go on record?
Okay, yes, but the doctor is coming in faint for me.
It's
Thank you.
somewhat faint on my end as well.
Let me try one more
But
second.
all right, let's go ahead and begin.
I apologize. Could we get one more mic check from our petitioner?
Is this better?
You're still a little faint.
Doctor, if you go to the audio and video icon at the top of the screen, click on that and audio settings. It gives you an option to increase your microphone. I think that helped me earlier this morning. I'm not sure, but
No. Is that better? It's showing every time I talk, the input level is moving.
yeah, it's a little bit better.
Yes, it's better. Thank you.
Okay, great.
All right. We are on record before the Board of Behavioral Sciences to review the petition of Vanessa Lee Perosier. This is BBS case number 2002-02-000-2232, Office of Administrative Hearings, case number 2024-040-931. May I have the members of the board identify themselves for the record, starting with Dr. Boyd.
Dr. Nick Boyd, LPCC.
Abigail Ortega, LCSW.
Justin Huft, marriage and family therapist.
Chris Jones, LEP member, chair.
Wendy Strack, public member, vice chair.
John Sovek, LMFT.
Susan Friedman, public member.
Kelly Renner-Singer, public member.
Dr. Annette Walker, public member.
Eleanor Uribe, licensed clinical social worker, member.
Thank you. May I have the appearances of counsel, please?
Good morning, Your Honor. Counsel for Dr. Perosier, Carolyn Park, and good morning to Ms. Crawford and members of the board.
Anahita Crawford, Deputy Attorney General, appearing on behalf of the people of the state of California.
All right. So, Dr. Perosier, I'm sure that Ms. Park has already explained this to you, but the protocol for hearings like this is generally for the Deputy Attorney General to present an overview of your case and present your petition. After that, you'll have the opportunity to testify, to call witnesses if you choose, and to introduce evidence on your own behalf. So with that, Ms. Crawford, are you ready to proceed?
Yes.
All right, please do.
The petitioner was issued a licensed marriage and family therapist license on July 22nd, 2021. and it'll expire on July 31st, 2025. An accusation was filed on December 2nd of 2020, which alleged that petitioner had been convicted of the crime of driving under the influence on August 20th of 2020. The petitioner also admitted to a high blood alcohol level enhancement, which was a blood alcohol content of 0.189% when she drove her car and collided with two other vehicles that had stopped in traffic. Petitioner was placed on probation for 4 years, ordered to enroll in a 6-month first offender program, and to have an ignition interlock device installed on her vehicle for a year. She completed her DUI offender program and removed the ignition interlock device in the spring of 2021. Her criminal probation terminated and the case was expunged in June 2022. The petitioner entered into a stipulated settlement with the board, which became effective July 22nd of 2021, to place her license on probation for 4 years with terms and conditions including psychological evaluation, psychotherapy, 2-semester units in substance use and abuse, supervised practice, dependency support program, abstaining from substances and testing, along with standard terms and conditions of probation. The cost recovery has been paid in full. Petitioner is fully compliant with all aspects of her probation terms, and she's requesting to modify her probation to remove all optional terms of probation, including psychotherapy, abstention from drugs and alcohol, testing, attending a dependency support program. Petitioner removal of some of the standard terms of probation, including notification to clients and her employer of her probation status.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, but the audio, it keeps. I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt, but it keeps saying that something about a call. I don't know, but I lost the counsel. The cost recovery has been.
Crawford, do you mind backing up?
Not at all. The cost recovery has been paid in full. The petitioner is fully compliant with all aspects of her probation terms. She is requesting to modify her probation to remove all optional terms of probation, including therapy, abstention from drugs and alcohol, testing, and attending a dependency support program. Petitioner also requests removal of some of the standard terms, including notification to client and her employer of her probation status, the prohibition on supervising unlicensed persons, and reimbursing the probation program. Due to numerous probation tolling, 2.5 years remain petitioner's probation term, which is due to end November 3rd of 2026. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Do you wish to move forward with the exhibits?
I can at this time. Exhibit 1 is the notice of hearing for today's hearing date. We'd like to mark and introduce for all purposes.
Any objection, Ms. Park?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Exhibit 1 is admitted.
Exhibit 2 is the license and registration history certification for the petitioner. We'd like to mark and introduce that at this time.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 2 is admitted.
Exhibit 3 is the memo from staff to the board. Summary.
Ms. Crawford, you cut out again.
Did you lose me?
We did. Last I heard was memo to the board.
Okay. Exhibit 3 is the memo to the board, which summarizes the petitioner's probation history. We'd like to mark and introduce that at this time.
Any objection?
No.
Exhibit 3 is admitted.
4 is the petition for modification of penalty filed by the petitioner. We'd like to mark and introduce that.
Ms. Park?
No objections.
All right, exhibit 4 is admitted.
Exhibit 5 contain the documents in support of the petition that we'd like to mark and introduce.
Any objection?
I just wanted to clarify with Ms. Crawford that and confirm that the document that we had provided regarding the work verification from 11 kids was also included and could be included in this particular exhibit.
That document, I have no objections to that document coming in, but this is just the packet that was provided by the petitioner at the time of her application. So it would not include anything after that date.
Okay, understood.
Oh, but we can introduce that separately.
Got it. Thank you. And no objections.
All right, exhibit 5 is admitted.
Exhibit 6 is the psychotherapy information sheet that was provided by the petitioner. We'd like to mark and introduce that.
No objection. Apologies, Your Honor. No objections.
All right, exhibit 6 is admitted. Counsel, before you move on to the last 2 exhibits, is there a need for a protective order for exhibit 6?
No, Your Honor.
Yeah, I don't believe so.
Okay. All right.
Okay, exhibit 7 is the supervised practice information sheet, also provided by the petitioner. We'd like to mark and introduce that as exhibit 7.
Ms. Park?
No objections.
Exhibit 7 is admitted.
And exhibit 8 is the underlying disciplinary record in this matter that we'd like to mark and introduce as well.
And any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 8 is admitted.
And Your Honor, I know that Ms. Park indicated there was one additional document. She had previously provided that to me. I believe she's also uploaded it. We can put that as next in line. I wouldn't have any objection to that.
All right, and give me one moment. I saw this morning that OAH received around 150 pages in exhibits. Are any of those duplicative to what the board or the exhibits that have just been admitted?
Yes, Your Honor. They were just reordered for convenience, but they are all included other than for exhibit I that was submitted to the OAH and also separately provided to the board via email. It is a single page document. It is dated, or excuse me, it is from 11 kids. It is a work verification letter and it is dated April 18th, 2024.
And you said exhibit I?
Yes, it was provided as petitioner's exhibit I.
Okay, I see it. So Ms. Park, do you want to potentially just withdraw the balance of those and then we can mark that as petitioner's exhibit A? Would that work?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection to that, Ms. Crawford?
No, Your Honor.
All right. So I will leave that to you, Ms. Park, to move in when you begin your case. But it sounds like there's not going to be any objections, so we can take that up when we're ready to do so. Ms. Crawford, any further evidence or witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Park, how do you wish to proceed?
Chair
Your Honor,
Jones, I don't believe we have an Exhibit I.
All right, so the packet that I have, Exhibit I, the cover page for Exhibit I is on page 105. And the actual letter itself is on page 106.
Got it. Thank you.
So Ms. Park, do you want to address what we'll now mark as Exhibit A first?
Yes, Your Honor. I have a document here, Exhibit A, dated April 18th, 2024. It is a verification of enrollment and hours worked from 11 kids from Sandra Ector. I would like to mark it as Exhibit A and move it in for evidence.
Any objection, Ms. Crawford?
No objection.
All right, Exhibit A is admitted. All right.
No further, apologies, Your Honor. No further exhibits.
Does your client intend to testify?
Yes, Your Honor. I would like to call Dr. Perosi to the stand.
All right, and do you intend to call any other witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Dr. Perosi, would you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you'll give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Doctor. Ms. Park.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Dr. Perosi.
Good morning.
As a result of your conviction around August 20th, 2020, for a misdemeanor for driving under the influence, did the criminal court sentence you to informal or otherwise known as summary probation?
Yes, they did. Napa County Superior Court or Napa County Court sentenced me to 3 years of informal probation that I completed and got dismissed in 18 months.
So you didn't end up needing to serve the entire 3 years?
No. I was counseled by my attorney at the time to wait 2 years, as that was more standard in the practice at the time. But at the beginning of that summary, I don't remember who it was, said that I could at least wait halfway, which is 18 months. And so I asked my counsel if we could try anyway, given that I completed all of the terms and also did extra work attending some classes that were not part of the sentence. And so he did, and the judge granted that 18-month dismissal or early termination and expungement.
What sort of classes did you take, and what did you learn, if anything?
So in addition to the 6 months, DUI course that was mandated as part of that summary, I did a moderation management workshop 101. I've done that twice, but I did it the first time during the summary probation for the county. And then the second time I did it. Yes.
I'm sorry for the interruption, but I think our court reporter would appreciate it if you could try to talk just a little bit more slowly.
Okay, thank you. So the class that I took was a 6-session workshop that I've taken twice now. The first time I took it was during that summary probation, and then the second time was recently last year for this probation. And so I took that workshop as well as had individual meetings with a moderation management coach.
So what, if anything, have you learned about alcohol use since this conviction?
Yeah, so this was more of a reminder, and I learned more awareness as the day of my incident, as my DUI. I learned that I was not as physically aware in my body as I could have been. And that was validated by a colleague who I was spending the day with, that day who assured me that she never would have let me drive if it appeared that I was under the influence. And one thing that I definitely would have done differently was eat dinner. We had snacks, but and we actually met for lunch earlier that day. And so definitely listening more to my body and providing what it needs under that level of alcohol use. As well as I believe that I fell asleep at the wheel, which led to those collisions. And so there was an element of disconnection that I was experiencing that day. I wouldn't say blackout, but I think it has a lot to do with my self-awareness, which I learned during moderation management meetings. We talked about inner critics. We talked about mindfulness and being in the body during alcohol consumption. And as a therapist, we talk about those things about mindfulness and awareness, but moderation management coach and meetings helped me connect the dots between that and consuming alcohol. So I really appreciate that. That's one major thing that I learned.
And who was your coach for this moderation management?
Yeah, so I forget Barbara Joe. I call her Beige. That's the name that she goes by, her nickname, Beige. And I found her during this process, during summary probation. I was looking into alternative recovery style groups and came across moderation management, and she ran the women's group on Wednesdays.
And speaking of Barbara Jo Carpin, I'm referencing Exhibit 5. There is a document, a 3-page document on dated August 27th, 2023 from Barbara Jo Carpin. To your knowledge, Dr. Perosi, is she aware of your disciplinary action with the board?
Yes. She told me verbally. I believe in the letter she does not acknowledge it as clearly, but during our one-on-one meetings, I talked to her about the situation, which was helpful too.
And what have you gained and learned from moderation management?
Yeah, I appreciate moderation management as it is an alternative approach, and it is focused on having a moderate and balanced approach to drinking. So during these workshops, I was in a group with other women who were experiencing similar situations, and we shared some practical advice to each other, and I thought was really cool. So practical in terms of how to moderate, how to manage alcohol drinking, and that was something as simple as keeping the amount of drinks that you can safely tolerate in the form of pennies in one pocket, and every time you drink, move 1 penny to the other pocket. So almost like a drink ticket. Another tip or trick, it was to set a timer to help spread out the amount of time in between drinks. And then another one was to order version drinks in between drinks and alternate. And so I did learn those practical tips, those practical applications, which I thought was really cool, in addition to the mindfulness and the harm reduction and the more internal skills too.
And referencing that letter, it should be under attachment 8 in Exhibit 5, roughly page 112. There is a mention that of a co-leadership that was asked of you. Can you expand on that?
Yes. And so even though I was not a therapist in these groups, I resonated and shared the frustration and the pain of being in situations that were interrupted by alcohol. And so I think just my empathic nature was welcomed in the group. In my one-on-one meetings with Beige or Barbara Jo, we grew a rapport, and just talking about the process that other women was experiencing in conjunction with mine. And she suggested that I do a DUI group, which at the time I don't think I was emotionally prepared for or wanted to do. So instead, she just extended the offer just to help co-lead and lean a little bit more into explaining my own process and my own process in terms of my more professional awareness in the groups with her. And I value that. I really like this. Is not the only time I've been invited to share my expertise, and I appreciate it.
Did you have any other subsequent issues of criminal misconduct since this past conviction?
No, I have not. This is my first one, or only one, last one.
The board placed you on administrative probation as a result of this conviction. Did your probation ever toll?
Yes. So I told 4 times during the probation. And so each time I've requested a toll, each one of those 4 times. The first time was 11 months, and then subsequently after that had been a month to a month and a half. And 1 month, because that's the board standard, is that the toll has to at least be 30 days. I consider it a proactive step to demonstrate my commitment to restabilizing my license. By acknowledging the need for more time and willing to extend the probationary period through the option of tolling, I showed that I took full responsibility for my actions and also considered it as a period of rest, a period that I could use to demonstrate compliance and promote greater compliance in the future when untold, as well as helping to not be pressured by any of the deadlines or terms and just taking kind of breaks. It helped me better manage my participation in the probation.
And since the conviction in 2020, what have you done, if anything, to work towards self-improvement?
Yes, wow. So in addition to the therapy that was part of the probation terms that I did weekly, and just recently moved to, over the past few months, moved to monthly, I've done a lot of combinations of professional and personal growth, a lot of certificates and CEs, as they're very convenient to get, and they're also comfortable. I'm used to being a student and sitting in front of my computer, so that was very helpful. I've done, in terms of personal, I did overcoming trauma-related shame and self-loathing, science of addiction, the 12-hour drug offender program that the board requested, 16-hour drug and alcohol awareness, 12-hour alcohol and other drug course. In addition to those, I did a 12-hour anger management, as that was a concern that was mentioned by the psychiatrist in his report. So I wanted to get on top of that, and I took one of those. Mindfulness Drinking 101, which was the second workshop that I did. So altogether, I've done about roughly, if not a little more, 40 hours of drug and alcohol education. But for more professional, to reach my, I'm sure we'll talk about goals here soon, but I've also done extra certificates on LinkedIn, because I also wanted to keep my interest in the field and not only focus on personal things, because again, that can be very heavy. So I did some on managing teams and employees, trauma and homelessness, advanced trauma for kids, as I currently work with kids in a non-clinical setting. And so that is just for my own education. Anxiety-related disorders and COVID, since I was working with people who
Excuse
were...
me.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, ma'am, I lost you there. At non-clinical setting. Thank you.
Anxiety-related disorders and COVID, telemental health. I did a course on becoming a telemental health provider before the board made it a standard and made sure that everyone got training and CEs for telemental health. I did it already because I knew that I was taking a private practice approach and opening up a private practice on the computer. So I wanted to make sure I was well equipped for that. And then I did a 6.5-hour immigration evaluation course too, to pivot my practice to do something other than therapy and meet people in a different way and to serve the immigration population. So that's a combination of professional and personal certificates that I've done. And I've also done a lot of work in the field academically too. I can elaborate on that as well.
Yes, Dr. Perosi, could you tell us more about what you've done academically? Have you gone to school?
Yeah, yeah. So, in conjunction with managing the rigor of this probation, I also managed the rigor of completing a PhD. During my letter that I wrote before getting on probation to the board, I mentioned that I wanted to advance the profession. I wanted to learn more about teaching, leadership, supervision. At the time of my incident, I had applied to a PhD program, hadn't received an approval letter yet. And during the time of my approval letter, I was quite nervous because I wanted to speak with the program director regarding my upcoming conviction. It hadn't happened yet. And so I'm really grateful for their restorative justice approach. And so he was aware of my situation when it came to internships and working with clients, but I completed 3 years of a PhD program at Antioch University. And also it continued during those times of tolling, at least 3 of the 4. I got a certificate in nonprofit management from the California State East Bay in Hayward. I did it online because a lot of my associate work was in the field, was in community settings. And one of the reasons I wanted to get a PhD is because I wanted to learn more about management, more about systems, more about functioning. And I really didn't want this probation or this conviction to get in the way of that. And so it was all about balance. And so I got a nonprofit management certificate. It took me a year. As also part of my academic journey, I published and presented with my professors, with 3 faculty members on pronouns at the AAMFT Queer and Trans Advocacy Network virtually. That was also done during the first toll as well, just to show that I was still balancing the advancement of the field during these times of breaks. And if I would not have told, I think that I would have a different story. I did a presentation with a classmate as one of the requirements of my PhD program for restructuring family development theories. And that was in Puerto Rico during April of 2022. Before my decision on order, before and during when I was assigned the probation, kind of that time frame, I did allyship workshops, anti-oppression. There was just a lot of political chaos in our country, and I'm really happy I got to work with a LCSW from Washington, who was a classmate as well, on providing that for our university. We did 5 different workshops spread across the different departments in our university, as well as Ombudsman Services of Contra Costa County reached out to the clinic that I was working at, looking for someone who would do a presentation for volunteers on older adult mental health, and I hopped on that too. I really have a heart for teaching. I like to explain things. I like to point out areas of need, and I was really happy to accept that. Again, I didn't want any of this to get in the way, and so I was really committed to balancing and keeping it all together, despite my drinking tendency that led to a DUI in 2020. I've done a few publications, one for adoption of stepchildren and family and divorce. I wrote my own literature review on severe mental illness in families and published that. That was my dissertation topic, but I published that article before completing my dissertation. And I also was invited to review a journal article with JMFT. And so I was really excited about that. And the article I reviewed and read and gave feedback to was about substance use disorders in families. I reviewed that twice after giving the reader some information. As far as I'm aware, that was not crossing any boundaries of the probation. There was no CEs or anything involved. It really was reading and providing feedback. I was invited a second time by JMFT to review an article, but the topic was more aligned with one that my colleague but the topic was more aligned with my colleague's interest, and so I referred him, and I was really happy to refer a colleague to do something extraordinary in our field. Another thing that I did is that I proposed a mental health night for my church, the church that I grew up in, and which mental health can be taboo. And the talk of clinical work can be quite taboo in the Black church. So I'm really happy that they allowed me to structure and put together a community program. It took 6 months to plan, and I raised a little over $2,000. And I hosted it in Berkeley, California. I had about 50 attendees. It was a Q&A, and I invited 2 colleagues at LCSW and at AMFT to do a Q&A panel with me. I've also, I've been an adjunct professor as well, teaching theory. I've been a graduate assistant with my professors, and currently I'm a site director, which is a non-clinical role, running an after-school site for kiddos K through 5th grade. And there's a lot of hurt and pain, and they're from lower social economic status. And I provided a brief basic workshop on ACEs for my colleagues. And so I actually have to run to work later this afternoon to go support them. Let's see, I have my own private practice to remain compliant with the clinical term to remain active. I have a small caseload where I see women who are in various parts of California. Well, I'll see anyone who aligns with my approach to therapy, which is focusing on relationships and parallels. But right now I currently have, that's my clientele currently, it's females. Let's see. I was also a co-chair for the Justice Leadership Council, which was a collaborative group between faculty, staff, and students at my university. That was my work study assignment during my 3 years of my doctoral program. And I helped liaison between the students and the provost. And so we did community surveys. We
I'm
addressed.
sorry. Excuse me.
Mhm.
Between the students and, I didn't catch that. Thank you.
The provost.
I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm not catching that. The what?
Provost.
Provost?
PROVOST. It is an official of university in the university system, kind of like a president almost, a dean.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so these are all things that I balanced and managed over the past 4 years that I definitely wanted to share and highlight. Someone in my department for my university recommended me or nominated me for the Reader's Digest Merit Grant in 2021, and I don't know who because it was anonymous, but I was really excited because of all of the work that I've been doing and was doing in our university. So I was nominated for that. Someone else got it. I'm sure they were doing a lot of good work too, but I'm really thankful to have been nominated. There's also some leadership opportunities that I was involved in too. I was a volunteer development manager for my church's hotline. It was a suicide-focused helpline where we trained volunteers to help people who were experiencing distress, and they would text into a platform that we were using, and I helped give feedback on the training materials that we created. They created most of it, and I went through and helped revise and revamp it. I helped with the onboarding, interviewing, as well as offboarding and management of the volunteer shifts. So that was really fun. That lasted 6 months. And also at my university, I got invited again to facilitate a BIPOC affinity group okay. Excuse me. That was once a month, and that was January 2021 to September. I was provided a stipend, honorarium for that as well. So that was a lot of fun. I had a lot of autonomy on what topics that we would choose, mostly in alignment with issues that were going on in our country, the police brutality and how to help students cope. So that's some of the professional, community-based, as well as academic achievements that I've done over the past few years.
Thank you so much, Dr. Perosier. And have you experienced any difficulties with the terms of your probation?
Yes, I have, and I have some examples as well. So, would this be a good time to talk about those terms?
Yes, which terms were most difficult and why were they?
Sure. So I have several. So one of the barriers that posed by the requirement to have supervised practice is the potential impact on job prospects within the field. So I'm fully committed to complying with the probation requirements. The reality is that some employers may be hesitant to hire people requiring ongoing supervision. This requirement could signal to a potential employer a perceived lack of trustworthiness and reliability, which seems appropriate in the beginning, but fast forwarding to the progress that I've made, that trustworthiness and reliability does not seem in alignment, thus limiting my access to specific job opportunities. So an example was it's going to sound excessive, but I had a 6-hour interview with CSU San Francisco, California State University, San Francisco. And that was October, November of last year. I was applying for their associate director position. I sat for 1 hour virtually to meet with their hiring committee. And then the second interview, I went in person and they made a day out of it. It was a 5-hour appointment. We reviewed over mock situations. I had an interview with the community. I had a second interview with the hiring committee, as well as a tour of the campus and a second interview. Oh, no, sorry. First interview one-on-one with the director. So I disclosed about the probation, and he sounded interested in having me on their team, given my expertise, given the work that I've done in my own university. However, he was limited because he had a PsyD, and I did not get that job. And so I was fully qualified, fully compliant, fully ready, and that has been a barrier. I think not only being on it, but the parameters of how it's organized. So by removing that requirement for supervision, I would have a greater autonomy and appeal as a candidate, and I would be able to help move the field forward instead of feeling held back by it, as that's what I've been focusing a lot of this past 3 years on, not just practically, but personally too. Enhancing my ability to pursue and secure meaningful and gainful employment opportunities. And so respectfully, I request the removal of probation terms requiring notification of employees and provision of legal documents. I know that's a standard term, but given that this information is publicly accessible.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. I need the witness to please slow down.
If you could slow down.
Notification. You said requiring
yes. Notification of employers and provision of legal documents before commencing employment. So given that this information is publicly accessible on the state database, on the BREEZE, duplicating this process seems redundant and potentially burdensome to me and prospective employers. And even stated on my supervision information sheet, I believe that the supervisor respectfully agrees for all parties who are involved. So eliminating this requirement for supervision and also notifying prospective parties could help me focus on demonstrating my qualifications and contributing positively to the field in an adequate manner without administrative hurdles. So removing this requirement for clients as well would also allow me to maintain professionalism and focus on providing quality of care without the potential of distraction within the therapeutic process.
Thank you so much, Dr. Prosty. I apologize for interrupting. Your Honor, do you mind if we take a brief recess?
Well, Mr. Jones, how do you want to proceed? Do you want to break for lunch? Or
No, we would like to continue on. We need to move through this, so we're going to hold off on that recess. Thank you.
All right.
I apologize, Dr. Prosty. If you could please continue, and I will just re-ask my question of if you could pick, the most burdensome, the terms that were most difficult for you and why.
Yes, I have 7 terms that I feel are most burdensome. Should I continue with them, or would you like me to narrow them down?
Dr. Prosty, please absolutely do as you feel comfortable.
Okay. Okay. Well, that was 1 or 3 in 1 would be supervision, notification to employers and clients. And some of these are hand in hand, and so I do want to review them because I believe they overlap. So submit to alcohol and drug testing would be the next one. That's very pertinent. So while drug testing may reassure some employers, it's essential to consider its broader impact on the job search. So while it may signal reliability, it could also deter employers who view testing as intrusive or stigmatizing. So removing this requirement would offer greater autonomy and access to job opportunities and enhance my career prospect. It would ensure that I'm evaluated based on qualifications rather than arbitrary criteria. I can see that criteria not being arbitrary if I demonstrated it over the past 4 years, but I believe I've demonstrated the opposite. So I remain committed to this process and the requirements and provide assurances as needed. So removing this requirement would allow me to focus on my career goals and continue to contribute meaningfully, and not in this roundabout manner. So additionally, the testing and supervision requirements might hinder my ability to secure employment, yet they also require financial resources that I'm running out of that I can only get through gainful employment. So removing these requirements is essential for fostering my career advancement and financial stability. And doing so would enable me to reallocate resources towards other necessary expenses like psychotherapy and program reimbursement. So ultimately helping me contribute positively to the workforce. Additionally, alleviating financial strain and prevent any unnecessary and sudden or abrupt tolling, which would also disrupt my client's progress. So supervision of unlicensed person. I understand that this is also a standard term, but I wanted to review it with you as I do have another example. The restriction on supervising registered associates is a barrier to accommodating the demand of supervisors in the field. A handful of jobs that I've found are looking for people who've been licensed for more than 2 years who can supervise licensed associates registered. So with the extensive training that I've experienced in my PhD regarding ethics and of supervision, also to the level of being able to teach ethics and supervise ethics of supervision, I think that I could be really helpful here. And also the volunteer work that I have managing teams. I can mentor emerging professionals but the restriction limits my effectiveness in doing so. By lifting it.
Dr. Prosty, I'm sorry for the interruption, but I just want to make clear, so our record is clear. Are you reading from a document?
Yes, I have notes.
All right. Go ahead.
Okay. I can fully contribute as a supervisor and valuable employee, aiding associates in their careers and addressing industry needs. I think just me undergoing this experience makes me also very valuable in that I have a story to tell around my own ethics and what I've learned from them and how it makes me a more valuable supervisor. So just recently I had two interviews with Bayside Marin Recovery. I worked there as an associate and I reapplied. They had a director of outpatient programs position open and I applied for it. During that second interview, it turned out that they needed somebody to supervise their associates, and the person who was interviewing me was temporary. And because of that restriction, I was unable to get that job. They were open, they knew the probation terms, and because of the nature of their work and recovery, they were happy to interview me and to move forward with potentially hiring me. So removing that restriction enables me to fulfill this role and demand to address the need for qualified supervisors. So I wanted to bring that up. Am I okay to keep going?
Your Honor, I would like to request a brief 5 to 10 minute recess. 5 minutes is fine.
All right, if we're gonna go through the hearing, we can take a 5-minute recess just to give everybody a quick break. So let's come back at, we'll say 8 minutes, so 12:10.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Jones, do we have all members of the board back?
Almost. Judge, yes, we do. He's going to a seat. Judge, I do have a question if I can ask.
Sure.
We, as a board, we're not able to modify standard terms. We can only modify the optional terms. So can we ask the petitioner to focus on the optional terms that she would like us to modify, because we can't do anything with the standard terms?
Yeah, Ms. Park, I think that's a fair request. It might, enable you and Dr. Perosier to more narrowly tailor your questions in her testimony. So Ms. Temple, are you ready to go back on record?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you.
All right, we are back on record before the quorum of the Board of Behavioral Sciences. All parties are present. Dr. Perosier is still present and under oath, and Ms. Park, you may resume.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Perosier, how will modifying the optional terms of your probation help you moving forward? And you are muted, Dr. Perosier. I just wanted to.
Thank you. So I think I know all of the optional terms. I apologize. I don't really know the which ones are which. But modifying it would help me contribute to the field in a meaningful way. I feel like I've put in a lot of work to adhere to the probation as well as address my incident, my conviction, both in conjunction. And so modifying at this time would help. I just newly graduated in August of last year, and I've been in the field for 9 years. And so I would like to stick with the field if I can, but I'm coming up across barriers that hinder me from being able to do so. That's coming up in my interviewing. Unlike other therapists that I've come across who prefer private practice, I'm more of a people person and I value community. And it restricts me from being able to be in the community, which rightfully so would be appropriate if I didn't have the achievements that I've made. And so I've thought this whole time that I'm serving and advancing a field that is holding me back. And whether that be systemic or whatever the case is, I'm really grateful to be able to sit here and at least talk to you about it. And so modifying would at least help me get my stride back. And I think that that is a component of rehabilitation. One can only rehabilitate when allowed to when it comes to these kinds of regulations, at least I think.
Is there anything else that you would like the board members to know, Dr. Perosi?
Yeah. From my understanding, the board deeply is concerned with safety to the public. And I think that over the past 4 years, I have demonstrated immense safety. I work with kids. I've been with them for almost 2 years, and they are under my supervision when I'm with them every day that I see them. And I'm also a mandated reporter in that setting. I also, as a researcher, completing research in my university, there's law and ethics that I have to abide by to research, and research has to go through an internal review board. So I've demonstrated safety there. And so there is I hope that those are two markers that are considered when it comes to safety. I feel like this process of disciplining really is a process to highlight the discipline that I've had in other areas too, not just in our own field when it came to alcohol consumption. And also validated that that incident happened outside of work hours. So I'm happy to recognize that there was a distinction, that there's always been a distinction between work and non-work activities. And unfortunately, it reached the work sector of my life, which is why I'm here with this circumstance. But sorry, did I answer the question?
Yes, you did. Thank you so much, Dr. Perosi. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Ms. Park. Dr. Perosi, Ms. Crawford will have the opportunity to ask you some questions now, and then I will turn over to the board.
Dr. Perosi, you placed your probation and tolling status as soon as your probation term became effective, right?
Yes.
What was the basis for placing your probation on tolling status?
Yeah. So I was not working in the field at the time. And so the monitor kind of talked it over with me in terms of how to best start the probation. I secured a supervisor and a therapist within the amount of time required, but I was not ready. I did not have a private practice, and to be quite frank, I didn't anticipate having one. I was job hunting and then came across the barriers of not being able to work in an agency or agencies preferring not to hire people on probation. And so I wasn't in a place to successfully adhere to the terms. So it did take me 11 months to get everything up and started. I had to get a name for my private practice and file the correct forms with the county, and I had to set up an EHR. I had to get money to do those things. I had to market myself and just do all the kind of normal private practice stuff to get it up and running. So we decided to just toll and push back the date until I was fully ready.
And by ready, you mean that you had a job lined up?
No, I had to create my own job through private practice. Okay. I did start working with Loving Kids in 2021 as a supplement to the financial part of it. And Loving Kids actually just pays for my non-probation expenses, car note, phone bill, that kind of thing. So Yes, I did look for it, and I also work for 11 Kids part-time too.
And were you working for 11 Kids in your capacity as a licensed marriage and family therapist?
No, I'm a site director.
And that does not require an LMFT license?
No.
So during that time, you said you started therapy while you were in told status?
Oh, I started the practice, all of the logistical measures. I did not conduct therapy. I think I started that in June of 2021. No, to adhere to the board's request, I did not practice therapy until I was untold.
Okay. I apologize. My question was obviously confusing. I thought that you said you were participating in one of your conditions of probation, which was psychotherapy for yourself.
No. I still don't understand your question. I'm sorry.
So one of the conditions of your probation was to participate in psychotherapy. So to have a therapist that you would go and seek services from.
I see. Yes.
Did you do that while you were told? In
No.
told status?
No, but I secured one. I think we have 30 days to find a therapist, and that was a challenging process. So it took several contacts before I was able to get a therapist. I got the therapist, SEO Jean is her name, and I believe we started when I was ready to start the probation.
Okay. So your psychotherapy term started after that 11-month tolling period.
Yeah. Yes.
And what about the drug testing term? Was that also told?
I believe when you toll probation, you toll all of the optional requirements. So no, I didn't start drug testing until I was untold and practicing as a marriage and family therapist.
Okay. And so during that time that you were told, those first 11 months of the probation term, did you also continue to drink alcohol?
Yes, there was times where I did consume alcohol. Yes. I think, yeah, probably. Sorry.
Okay. And when did you complete that psychological evaluation that you're supposed to complete within 90 days traditionally?
Ooh. That is a great question that I don't really have the dates for, but I do believe I completed it early.
So before the ending of your toll?
Yes. Yes. The monitor did allow me to work on education, the psych testing. I think those two things. Within that gap, that 11-month gap. Since they were one time, they weren't ongoing terms. They were just one-time terms.
And then there were it looks like 3 or 4 other times where you decided to toll your probation. What was the reason for the other times that you chose to toll your probation?
Yeah. Well, there were times where I wanted to take a break from the probation since I had a lot of terms that were very heavy and challenging to navigate. But the board requires at least 30 days, and so they're in 30 days or a month and a half blocks. And so I took that 30-day block or added a couple of weeks. But it was just a nice time to tell my clients that I was going to be on leave and be able to not be stressed or add to the burden of being on probation during that time.
Okay. So it looks like after that 11 11-month period of tolling, you practiced for about 6 months and then told your probation from December 18th to January 17th of 2023. Was that a period of break that you wanted to take from doing the probation terms?
Yes.
Okay,
Toll
and you
2,
said
3, and 4 have the same reasonings. Yes.
okay.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, ma'am. Can you repeat that, please? Thank you.
Me or who?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, your
Oh,
answer.
okay. Sure. The tolling periods, the second one, third, and fourth have the same reasonings.
And so during that time, are you required not to practice if you're told?
Correct.
Okay, I understand now. Do you still have your private practice?
Yes, yes, I do.
And how, I know you are also working at 11 kids. So how many days a week do you have your private practice?
I schedule 3 days a week. My caseload is very small at the moment, and my clients are mostly bi-weekly.
So is the primary source of your income from your work with 11 kids?
Yes.
And where would you like to focus your work?
I would like to focus my work on full-time clinical work in leadership and administration. So supervision, program director, management, those types of jobs. That's what I went and got a higher education for, specifically to be able to train to be more equipped for those kinds of roles.
Does your license help in obtaining those roles, or do you even need a license for those roles?
Yes. In clinical settings, yes. I've applied to administrator roles that require a license. That's what I was going over before our break. I've applied to program director that requires supervision of associates. Even county jobs that are looking for associate director of programs. Now, in some academic jobs requiring to teach also require a license.
So on this incident that led to your arrest, your blood alcohol level was over twice the legal limit, but you've stated you really didn't feel the effects of the alcohol.
Yeah, that's
Why do you think at that level of intoxication you weren't feeling intoxicated?
Yeah, and that's a great question. So me and my colleague were out to lunch early. So this was during the day, and we were in the Napa area. We were walking around. It was a little hotter, and we did some wine tasting. And I figured that walking and staying hydrated would help. We did stop for dinner, but I wasn't hungry, and so I skipped dinner, and I think that that was also an error on my part. When we left later that evening around 7, we stopped by Starbucks. The whole purpose of me leaving was because I needed to get ready for work the next day. We stopped by Starbucks. I bought a coffee to take with me to have in the morning for my commute, and got in my car and left. So I really didn't notice any drunkenness. I didn't notice. And again, my colleague said that she never would have let me drive, and that she also values the severity of drinking and driving, if she would have noticed from the outside. And so, moderation management has helped me more keenly with that, as well as tolling and being able to drink during those tolling and being aware of my body and the feelings that come along with alcohol use, not only the moderation of it, but the feelings too. And so I think that's why, and why I potentially fell asleep. I think I fell asleep at the wheel, which led to those collisions.
So you have mentioned that your colleague has said she wouldn't let you drive if she thought you were under the influence, but your colleague was also drinking with you, right?
Yes.
She may have been under the influence herself and maybe not the best judge at that moment.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
And with moderation drinking, what did they teach you about things to identify about how you feel that would alert you that you're starting to get maybe under the influence to a dangerous degree?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in addition to teaching how to moderate, we took an approach that worked from the inside of judging mindfulness, judging feelings that could contribute to further drinking, whether that is familial conflicts, whether that is self-judgment, focus more on the action of drinking, and being able to know in your body based off of sensations that you'll experience, or knowing yourself and how your body reacts to alcohol, to be able to moderate, which leads to those practical tactics that I mentioned earlier. So it was very therapeutic in that it talked more about whatever was leading up to the inability to slow down or to have less.
So we're very used to hearing about AA, but that's got to do with abstention from drinking. What are some of what was the impetus for you looking into an alternative to the traditional AA for your rehabilitation?
Yeah. So I found moderation management during my summary probation. I was not required to go to any community meetings for that term, but I wanted to pick something that was not abstinence-based. I consider myself a social drinker, and I wanted to take on the challenge of managing. As you can see, that is a common thread just in my life and how I approach my personal and professional work. And so I found moderation management. I also have a history of studying harm reduction, as I presented at one of their conferences in 2014. And so I believe that it aligns with just my personality, as well as my social group, my family, my friends. And I didn't want this incident, even though very serious, I didn't want it to get in the way of my profession. And so I was determined, and still am, determined to choose moderation management as opposed to an abstinence-based program. I currently attend AA meetings online for the requirement to meet the dependency support requirement, as they are very convenient. And also, I value the camaraderie, the storytelling, and I filter which ones I go to. So I go to the more open ones that are geared more towards newcomers and are less focused on the abstinence approach. Because moderation management talks about moderating, and if I'm unable to drink right now, my stories become a little bit stale. I don't have anything to work off of in moderation management meetings right now, but I do prefer that. I just noticed that they have a core group that's not so much a community meeting, but one of kind of like a study group that you're assigned to help work towards moderating together, which is a similar approach that was done in the workshop that I went in. And so I really value that. I've never heard of moderation management before this, and I have no other support, no friends or anything who also use this this method. So I'm really happy that I found it. They also have a private Facebook group that I think I might join.
What was the difference, if any, in the frequency of your drinking or volume of your drinking before the incident and then after, once you found moderation management?
What was the difference?
In either yes. What was the difference in either the frequency or volume of what you were drinking before the incident, in the months or years before the incident, versus after you found moderation management? Has that changed at all?
Excuse me. Yes. Yes, it has. Again, I have more awareness now, and I also don't want to repeat the same problem, the same incident too. But just awareness, drinking more slow, being aware of not getting caught in the social scene as much, talking, texting, being friendly. I think that can pass the time by really fast and not help me not notice how much I'm drinking. So yes, it has reduced. I don't think I really have a number, but it has reduced.
Can you tell us who Philip Evans is?
Yeah. So Philip Evans is my therapist, who I had to cease sessions with to attend psychotherapy with the board approved therapist. I started seeing Philip in my master's program, as I had a requirement to have 24 hours of therapy. And and so that's where I met him. After my DUI, I went back to him just to talk it over and being in shock and having to adjust. And so I feel like I have a lot of rapport with him, and I would really love to be able to go back to see him. And I've talked about that with the current therapist that I'm seeing, even though she's been immensely helpful during this process too.
And you were seeing Philip Evans twice a month, 1 to 2 times a month?
Yes.
Was there any reason you weren't seeing him more frequently?
No. No, there was no reason that we discussed, the two of us. It just seemed like talking about life, about family, about professional. He actually, a conversation with him is what led me to pursue a PhD. And so I felt like I was in a positive place. I did not see him for any substance related issues. And so to avoid redundant conversations, it just seemed appropriate to see him less. It was all at will as well.
And you started seeing a therapist approved by the board, was it in June of 2022?
It should have been June of whenever I started the probation. Sorry, was that 2021?
When your probation period and your tolling period ended was June of 2022.
Okay. Yes. That's when I started seeing her.
Okay. What were you working on with your therapist?
Which one?
The board approved therapist?
Oh, okay. We were working on adjusting to this model, as well as adjusting to it in regards to completing school. We talked about my contributions to the field and how I would like to move forward in the field. We talked about the results of the psychological evaluation as well. Those are some of the things we talked about, mostly career related.
Okay. And was there any discussions about what led to your being placed on probation with regards to your arrest?
Yeah, yeah. Everything from start to finish. So from February until present, February 2020.
Did you discuss anything about mindful drinking?
I believe I told her about my experiences about it, and she's just been a really helpful listening ear and help just relay feedback and help me reflect on what I've learned in those workshops.
And you also had a work supervisor during your period of probation, is that right?
Yes, I still do.
Okay, and that's Kevin Anderson.
Yes.
What does he supervise your work as far as your private practice goes?
Yes. That's the only clinical work that I'm involved in right now.
Okay. And what are some of the benefits you feel you have with Kevin Anderson's supervision of your clinical practice?
I think there's a lot of benefits in that. He has also a robust practice, and so I've learned a lot from his management style. It's nice to have a kind of listening ear, being a licensed therapist in a very similar associate level role. And so I think the benefits is having someone to be able to talk to, which I could have anyway, through my colleagues too. But yeah, that's a benefit.
And have you had the opportunity to share with him some of your more complex cases or things you could use his help with?
Yeah, absolutely. There's times where I've called him outside of our meetings to ask questions.
Have you found any drawbacks to having a work supervisor?
Yeah, I mentioned it before our break. Just in terms of looking for, when it comes to job hunting, um, no, because I'm seen almost as an associate when it comes to having a supervisor and needing supervision. And so I'm unable to get work that's more meaningful and work that is more geared towards my expertise in the field. But in the position that I'm at with a private practice, which is a secondary interest. There's times where I do feel like there's an element of staleness when it comes to practicing, as we want to make sure that we're both complying with the requirements, and sometimes sitting across from each other can be I don't know how to say this more respectfully, but it can be challenging given that we're both very experienced.
How did you obtain your PhD in?
My PhD is in couple and family therapy. It is an AAMFT approved degree, and that had a leadership and consultation focus.
Similar to what you're hoping, the practice area you're hoping to go into with your PhD?
Yes, absolutely. No, it's not similar. It is directly related.
And I believe I saw that you have a certificate as a certified trauma professional.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you qualified for that certificate?
So it is a continuing education style certificate, and you can sign up, you apply, and you sign up, and you complete all of the courses required. I believe I took 11. And it is good to gloss over the functions of nonprofit organizations. A lot of my work has been in the field, and I really wanted to know more about the management of nonprofits, since a lot of our clinical settings are based out of nonprofits. And me getting additional education for leadership, supervision, and management from a therapy and clinical perspective, I wanted to couple it with a more government approach. So I took it not only for professional advancement, but also kind of for fun too. And so let me know if I'm talking fast. I speak quickly anyway, so let me know if I need to slow down. It went over the financials, board governance of nonprofits, law and ethics of nonprofits, the fundamentals of how they're supported by the greater federal government and their reasonings for being implemented into the community. We went over community engagement, leadership, program evaluation. That's all I can remember off the top of my head. But basically, just learning about nonprofits, and I wanted to have that to advance my understanding of nonprofits in our field.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
All right, I will now turn to the board, starting with Dr. Boyd.
Thank you for being here this morning, afternoon. I know that you've definitely been talking for a while, and really appreciate that. I do have a number of questions, but I want to also be mindful of some of the questions you've already answered for me a bit. But one of them that I think is really kind of standing out to me is, I really want to commend you and highlight your accolades. You've certainly done a lot during your time academically, professionally, and I think your testimony has certainly reflected that. But I would be remiss to say that I'm a little unclear where your personal work has fit into your testimony today. Let me be specific. Our role here is public safety, and you as a provider are being evaluated on your judgment. With that comes a level of insight to what has occurred. And I'm trying to understand from your testimony today where that fits. What is the work that you have done personally that will let us leave here feeling very confident that you have been rehabilitated, that your judgment in that day is not going to be repeated in light of your interest in continuing to also drink? So it's a bit of a loaded question, and I can certainly parse that out if that would be helpful, but maybe I'll let you respond to that first.
Yeah, that would be appreciated. Can you simplify that for me, please?
Sure. So I think the first part is maybe just helping us understand a bit, with what is the work that you've personally done? What have you taken away from your therapy, from all of that, and the insight that you've developed into yourself that led you to that poor decision that day, and how that's not going to be repeated again?
Yeah. Thank you for your question. I definitely see that incident as a fluke. I see it as an isolated event, but the work that I've done is really just speaks on my perseverance to have come this far and determined to not let it get in the way of my professional development. And because of that, I realize that I do have too much to lose to repeat that. and to even have let it repeat up until this point over some time over the past 4 years. I've done a lot of reflecting on myself to see what might have led to that, and I really think maybe it was just, as I mentioned before, just a lack of maybe just getting caught up in the moment. As I have had no issues with alcohol before, and uh, have been otherwise responsible. So I'm aware of the severity, um, but for a deep, meaningful, kind of dramatic connection to what happened, I I hate that it did. I'm not proud about that. Um, and I'm really grateful to have had support in my life to help get me through this adjustment. Um, but I'm definitely willing to take a step back to re-examine my relationship with alcohol, um, as that's ongoing. And that's also what I've learned through moderation management and the mindfulness, being mindful of stressors around me that might lead to dependency. Grateful that it hasn't, because if it would have, I don't think I would have had this many accolades. So I hope that answers more of your question.
Yeah, it does a bit. I guess I'm still trying to understand, for you personally, how, I guess a different way to ask it is how confident are you in your ability to be able to go forward and be able to manage these stressors in your life? Um, you know,
Yeah.
Life is going to keep on lifing. It's not going to stop. And I'm trying to understand what do you have in place to be able to manage these things, and especially if you're going to decide to continue to consume alcohol to some capacity, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be some level of that impaired to some degree, and so I'm trying to understand that a bit more.
Right. I guess what makes me confident that it won't happen again is that it has not happened again. I've been very careful to balance my alcohol consumption around my work, even during tolling periods where I was still working with kids, I was still working in research, I was still getting an additional degree. Um, and so I'm really proud about that. And um, I manage stressors through my community, through the new community that I've made friends through with the moderation management, through my colleagues who are my dear friends, as well as understanding shame a little better too, and exploring forgiveness, self-forgiveness too. And so do I I think that it's a practice that I've already been doing, not during times of being untold, but it's a practice I've already been doing anyway. That I'm trying to articulate that I will continue to do. So for me, it's not new.
Thank you. No further questions at this time. Thanks.
Ms. Friedman?
Thank you for being here. I have no questions.
Mr. Huff?
Justin Huff, thank you for being here. You are proposing these 13 modifications, some of which are not possible. I'm wondering if you are able to identify, perhaps with council's help, what specifically are you asking for that is possible?
Ms. Park.
In particular, we would like to ask for the optional terms to be modified, not the standard terms. In order to be an advocate for Dr. Perrosier, we asked for what we could. If the standard terms are not possible, for her benefit the optional terms. If you would like specifically which optional terms, I can pull them up. May I have a moment?
Yes, and in the meantime, I think I am concerned because I have heard nearly 2 hours of how much education you've gotten. Certainly, there's a lot. I've heard a lot about how you are providing to the field. You've said multiple times how you want to contribute to the field. My understanding is you're not here because of a lack of contribution to the field. You're here because of a public safety concern. And I'm hoping that you can spend a little bit more time identifying clearly how the public safety concern is going to be addressed, particularly in relation to these modifications.
Sure. So, given that my main goal is to have a position in leadership, which is also clinical and requires a license, I do understand the depth of safety that comes along with those roles, not just for clients, but also for staff. And I understand that through training, I understand it through education. Um, I I feel bad to have to take up this much time on this and to take up time at all. And honestly, to come back and, petition for early termination for you to hear it again. Um, but I don't feel good about this. I I really put in a lot of effort. It's not just that I went and did all of these great things, but there's purpose behind them, and there's also safety concerns connected to those too. So it's not just look at all the great things I've done, but look at also the weight of seriousness that are, I think, equally attached to those items when it comes to public safety. And if I can do it for those sectors, I can do it for this one too. As I've had more experience being a safe provider than I have the opposite. So I've done self-reflecting. I've done work in therapy with talking about these things, reflecting on it with my therapist, taking efforts and measures and certificates to aid it, as well, personal CEs to help better understand what I was missing, and being able to be cognizant of the work that I'm doing with my clients currently and not to disrupt their treatment. I'm glad that they continue to come back, as I've been seeing them for I would say a minimum a year, at the least a year now. And so not just that I've completed these things, but there's reasoning behind it. And if I wouldn't be able to do that otherwise. So I'm not sure what else I need to highlight in terms of my emotions. I think that that's passion. I really want this. And so I can continue to move forward in a private practice. This is really costly. I think that removing these optional barriers would help me be placed where my expertise is needed, and also what I'm good at. I don't feel like the private practice is really speaking to what I can do as well. And so that can come off, I think it comes off to clients in a private practice a certain way. So I'm sorry. I'm not sure what else I need to add to that.
No, that's helpful. Thank you. One last question. Can you tell us a little bit about how your therapy practice is different now than it was prior to probation? If I was a client and I saw you before and after, what am I noticing that's different?
I think more patience. I think more more attention to perspective as well. I was actually just speaking with my client about this yesterday. When it comes to projections and perspectives and carrying baggage with us into new relationships, and my practice focuses on those parallels and how those perspectives travel with us from work to home to whatever network that they're a part of. And so I feel like that was missing from my practice before. Also, I think that might be slightly altered with my practice before this probation. I was still an associate, whereas I do have more experience and more knowledge to couple with how I practice now. So it's slightly, I think, it's kind of like comparing apples to oranges. um, so, but yeah, I think it's perspective and helping point that out to my clients too.
Great. Thank you very much. No more questions.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
Hi, thank you for all of your testimony. I do have a couple of questions. Based on a couple of things that you had said during Dr. Boyd's questioning. You had mentioned, and I want to just for clarification, did I hear you correctly in saying that you don't believe that you have an alcohol dependency because of the number of accolades that you've achieved since this time, and because it would be impossible to have done all the things that you've done with an alcohol dependency? Is that an accurate reflection?
Yes, and I can explain more if you like.
A little insight would be great. Thank you.
Sure. So one thing that I talked about in therapy was the stress that came along with taking on this probation, but also measuring it with the responsibility that I had to do, right? Got myself in the situation of getting a DUI, and so I had to be accountable and responsible to doing whatever I need to do to restabilize my license, my practice, and my reasoning for being in the field. And so I had several conversations around that. But then also looking at how stressful the situation is, coupled with being in higher education, I think that if I had an alcohol dependency, I would have depended on it and not depended on my therapy, not depended on myself, not depended on what I care about. That's what dependency is. I would have depended on alcohol, and I did not do that. Instead, during tolling, for example, was a time where I actually was able to prove to myself, as well as this system and what I'm talking about now, that my alcohol use can still be moderated. I'm not depending on it and making poor decisions to practice outside of probation, to get behind a wheel, to do things that are against the law. So that's what I meant. I don't think that I would have come this far. I'm really trying to connect the achievements with the decision making. If this were to happen again, I think that I would have to come to terms that there's a pattern. There is no pattern because this is the only time that this has happened, and trying to understand where I fit in. And so also to understand where my relationship with alcohol not only fits in, but changes, such as what Ms. Crawford was asking earlier. What are the differences between the frequency between before and after? And I do notice a change, and to me, that's progress. So yes, I think that alcohol dependency would have been a barrier, would have come up. It would have come up in testing. It would have come up in violations. It would have came up in these measures that you have in place to identify dependency that have not come up now.
Thank you. One other question, and it just kind of goes off of what you started your statement with about the responsibility and the balance. You said that you wouldn't be doing this with your practice while you're driving a car. So am I hearing you correctly that you have not gotten behind the wheel of a car after you've had a drink since this incident?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ortega?
No further questions.
All right. Mr. Rangasian?
Thank you. Dr. Procia, you described your behavior as a drinking tendency and yourself as a social drinker. Why do you describe it that way?
Yeah. So this is during the process of me redefining my relationship with alcohol. Tendency in terms of hanging out with my friends, going to parties, Halloween parties, and get together and baby showers. Of course, the person who's pregnant isn't drinking. And so tendencies of socializing, which I consider to be part of my self-care. That's what happened that led to my DUI, is that I was out with a girlfriend and her fiance at the time. So sorry, I'm not sure if tendencies was not the right word. Tendency sounds like I tend to do that. But it's relationship with my social environments.
And you still drink alcohol with your friends?
Not during probation. I haven't recently, no.
Let's talk a little bit about your moderation management attachment H program. There is a letter from Ms. Carpin, and could you tell us who she is again?
Yeah. So she is a group facilitator for moderation management, and she is a harm reduction coach. She also does one-on-one sessions, and so I gained a relationship with her starting in my first summary probation.
Sessions in what precisely? Because Ms. Carpin is not a licensed therapist.
Yes. Coaching sessions.
Nor is she a licensed alcohol and drug counselor.
That is correct. Coaching sessions. So talking about moderating, talking about drinking, talking about social environments, talking about the inner self and mindfulness. So you're correct. She's not a licensed provider.
It's a little concerning because it sounds like psychotherapy, and she mentioned psychotherapy in her letter.
Oh.
But she's a coach.
Yes, she's a coach.
Do you have a relapse prevention plan?
That's a great question. So far, I would like to stay connected with this new community that I've come across in mindful moderation management. But it would be to definitely consider recovery programs more intently. Excuse me.
Is that a no?
No, I don't. No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Dr. Procia, you would agree that there are many professionals and academics and people just as accomplished and intelligent and outstanding as yourself who also have alcoholism, unsafe behaviors. Your petition seems to argue, and I'm just kind of following up on Dr. Boyd's comment, that those behaviors are mutually exclusive. But they're not, are they?
I see them as mutually exclusive.
So there's no academics with alcohol problems?
Say it again.
There's no PhDs with alcohol problems?
I imagine that there is. I don't believe that that means that that includes me.
So they're not mutually exclusive.
To be honest, I get confused by the terms.
Okay. You stated in your testimony, quote, "You are serving and advancing a field that is holding you back."
Yeah.
And that's a very powerful statement. Did you play any part in this, quote, holding you back? And if so, what was that part?
Yeah. Do you mean that I was holding myself back?
I, well, I don't want to color your testimony, so
Mhm.
maybe did you play any part in that holding you back or the negative effects which occurred?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was the main character that happened in this DUI, due to my lack of awareness at the time. Um, so yes, I created a wedge that brought me here, that brought me to needing to undergo these probationary terms. And I'm trying to mitigate that. And in the process of rehabilitating, I don't think that it's black or white of you have not rehabilitated versus you have. I think that it's ongoing, and that's what I've been trying to keep in mind. That's the approach I've been trying to take. Yes, I do play a part.
You described the event of your DUI as a fluke, and you also indicated you had no alcohol problems before, and it would appear from your testimony no alcohol problems after.
Mhm. Mhm.
Is it credible to believe, for the board to believe, that in this fluke, you had a significantly high alcohol content of 0.19 and collided with two vehicles? Isn't it true that that's a pretty substantial fluke?
Yes. Mhm.
The Deputy Attorney General noted a couple things. Your DUI was in August 20th of 2020, and then your settlement was June 22nd, 2021, and then you immediately went on the first tolling of
Mhm.
11 months.
Yeah.
And when did you begin the moderation management program?
Ooh. Um, can I check a file? Is that okay if I check a file really quickly?
Yeah,
That's
it would refresh your recollection. I mean, yeah.
That's
maybe
fine.
it would help you.
okay. Let me see. I do have a document that has dates.
I have no problem if you want to check that date. I'm trying to get at, when did you start the moderation management program if you were tolling for that first 11 months?
So, when I first started moderation management attendance was June 10th, 2020.
Okay.
And so that was right after not the conviction, but the DUI itself. There's
Okay.
6 months between the DUI and the conviction because of COVID.
Okay.
And
And during that 11 months of tolling, you indicated to the Deputy Attorney General that you were still drinking.
I don't know. But I know that I have consumed alcohol while told. So I can't really speak for that specific 11 months. I'm not sure. I wasn't out like partying and came home, So I don't want it to make it seem like it's that specific.
Okay. I have nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Silva?
Thank you. I do have a couple of questions, and one of them comes back to this period of tolling. In your testimony, you used the phrase that you see tolling as a period of rest. Could you share with us what that actually means?
Yes. So as I mentioned before, the probation is very rigorous. It's also expensive. And it is also an inconvenience. It can be. Even though there's benefits to having the structure and the ability to sit and reflect and learn new things about my own self-awareness and drinking and my relationship with alcohol. However, during those tolling periods or periods of rest, I'm not burdened by the deadlines. So I do not have to check in every day to see if I'm called to being tested. I do not have to submit an approval to travel outside of the state of California. I do not have to take supplies with me on trips. And it's really helpful in that way. I think that, and one of my friends who was sober at the time, when I was contemplating tolling, said, well, you should, because if you don't, you're already thinking about quitting. So if that's going to keep you licensed, then you should.
And do you believe that same philosophy played out in each of the 4 tolling experiences?
The last 3. The first one, the 11 months, was really to help get me set up logistically. I was working as an associate at Agape Counseling Center, and I had just, I don't remember the last when I stopped working there. I stopped working at Agape May of 2021. So shortly after being assigned to probation. So really the first 11 months was more logistical and getting things set up and getting ready. I was also a first year PhD student and just trying to balance both. Trying to get my footing, trying to stay in the game, trying to hold it all together. Trying to explore my relationship with alcohol, trying to do it all, trying not to quit. And so me and the therapist also talked about that several times. It came up about whether I even want to keep my license. Whether it's even worth it for me, especially being someone, an academic who does have transferable skills that another industry could appreciate. But then I'm reminded that this is what I signed up for, and this is also the incident that I have to be responsible for. So it is not easy, and it's not, it's very expensive as well, to be completely honest with you. I don't think I can afford last month's testing, and it's due on Monday. And if I can't afford it, I can't check in to test. And then that could be either a violation or an immediate toll that would put a pause to my clients who I have a strong rapport with, who I've been seeing for at least a year. This process is very hard. My petition is just as long as my dissertation. So I am adding to a field that I care about, that has parameters that I think could have been easier if they worked with me, helped me be in the field. If my own supervisor says that it would be best for all parties, I'm not sure what I'm also not articulating to, for example, remove supervision. So that's why I told, because it helped me not quit.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, in talking about the stipulation and the probation, you use the word inconvenient. Can you also maybe understand that from the board's point of view, it is also used as a rehabilitative process?
Sure.
So
Yeah.
if you were going to look at the rehabilitative process side of it, what might that mean to you?
Yeah, I think that it means helping somebody get back on their feet. But I think at a certain point, it can be a barrier. But I think that it helps provide structure to helping oneself or a therapist do some inner work and redefine components of their life. And so I feel like that's what I did. Redefine relationship, redefine goals, redefined past experiences that I might have been jaded by before before that DUI. And so I do think that it's helped in that way. But what I'm trying to say at a certain point, when that work is already done and I'm seeing my progress, not only in this area, but in other areas of my life, be positive, then I question of where can the rehabilitative work be done in crutches instead of in a wheelchair? When can it be done on your own and more independently than than as a hindrance? So I do definitely see a rehabilitative value to it.
So talking specifically about this idea of taking steps on your own, you've talked about moderation management quite a bit as your technique that has really been working for you. That is your approach to this.
Mhm.
If you were able to travel back in time, and remember, moderation management is all about skill building.
Mhm.
The day of this incident, what skills for moderation management would you have brought into play specifically that might have made this incident not happen for you?
Yeah. You're talking about the more practical skills or both practical and internal?
Um, Control skills, practical skills, all of those pieces of the puzzle that's skill-based in moderation management.
Sure. So more internally, we talked a lot about well, what was called the self-critic. What part, in kind of a IFS sort of approach, what part of you helped you keep drinking? And what part do you not listen to? And so I really love that concept. And that is when I definitely have been actually had fun kind of thinking more about while drinking. And that I did not consider back in February of 2020 is that kind of part. I never saw drinking, myself drinking as a part, as an external part. And so that's one tactic I would definitely would have used that I have used already. And then again, practically alternating between version and alcoholic beverages to slowing down ultimately, and using timer on the phone is also very helpful too. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Strutt?
Thank you for being here. I don't have any questions at this time.
Thank you. Ms. Uribe?
Hello. Okay. I was curious, during the time when the decision to drink and drive happened, do you think that there might have been any other things you might have been going through, like issues, other external factors?
Mhm. Yeah, I thought about that. Let's see. This was right at the beginning of the pandemic before the shutdown. I had just submitted my application to a PhD program, and I was waiting for my response. I was working as a therapist for a nonprofit in Sacramento, working with men and women on parole. One stressor that I can think of off the top of my head was that I had rumors at work that I was having an intimate relationship with my supervisor, and that was very stressful. I wouldn't say it led me to drink, but there could be a correlation there because a that was a situation that questioned my ethics. That was a situation that I never experienced before, who was an LCSW and who was very professional. It was hard. I've never experienced anything like that. I did speak it over with him, and he was aware too. So, to answer your question, that definitely could have been linked to the need or the desire to go hang out with my girlfriend. We had plans to hang out anyway, as we often did, but that was an event that happened around the same time.
So, you've talked about some self-care, so I was just curious, what other things do you do for self-care?
Yeah. So I take trips. Me and my mom, we like to travel. We're cruisers. So we like to travel. Um, Money has been a question here lately. We do like to try different restaurants and go out to eat. But when we're at home, we like to watch YouTube together. We watch a lot of cooking channels, as well as some political channels too, and follow politics. We one of my girlfriends lives across the bridge in the Bay Area, and so I'll go over her house sometimes. She's actually new to the field and getting a master's degree in social work, and so being able to help her in this process of school has been really delightful too. Another one of my colleagues lives out of state and is working towards her license in psychology, and so will
Here,
oftentimes.
the court reporter can hear. She's been gesturing for a few seconds.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I lost the audio at, we watch a lot of cooking channels.
Cooking channels, political channels. I have a friend who lives in Berkeley, so I'll go over her house sometimes. And she is a master in social work student, so I've been helping her when she asks and helping her kind of vent throughout the process. I have another friend in out of state, and she is sitting for a psychology license. And so we'll talk about those things. I do a lot of FaceTiming. I like to read. So now that I'm out of school, I get to go to the library more. I'm on my third library book this year. And I like to read psychological thrillers and mystery books. So I've been doing that too. And then really connecting with the kids in my community through my job. So that has been that's been fun. Most of them are 10, 11 years old. So it's not necessarily a hobby, but it's been fun too. So that's just in a nutshell.
Let me see, I think I had just a couple more. So the other thing was, well, one, what did you learn from the situation?
Yeah. I learned cause and effect of addressing myself and the effects of that, which I think is really important, going back to what I said before about patterns. And just changing the narrative, slowing down, thinking, connecting with my thoughts and what outcome could be, which is something that I didn't do in February. So I learned that. And just respectfully, I don't think abstinence is always an approach that has to be taken. And that's just my approach. I think that there's more to drinking than I realized in terms of relationship, in terms of timing, in terms of how my behaviors might be impacted through any stressors that I'm experiencing. So that's what I've learned.
And last question, do you ever think about like this situation right now? If you think about drinking, that's.
Sorry, what's your question?
I was just asking the situation that you're in right now. Have you ever thought about this right as you're thinking about drinking?
No,
The situation.
like that. No. I mean, there's times where I'm like, oh, that looks like a great recipe. But not in terms of I really need a drink. This is the only thing that's going to help me calm down. Again, I have other mediums that I've been getting into and reconnecting with, such as reading, and I have friends that play a really big important part who are aware of this process for me. So no, and again, that goes back to the relationship with alcohol. Is it a dependent relationship, or is it a relationship that is modifiable? And I believe it is modifiable.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Walker?
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. I've been practicing your last name in my mind for a while now, so I hope that I get it correctly. Is it Perrosier?
Rosier, yeah.
Perrosier, okay.
Yes.
Well, I just have one question, but I would be remiss if I didn't thank you for your testimony today. I think that you have presented yourself as having a sincere passion for the work that you do. And if I can pull together from what all has been said from every side of the conversation, I'm quoting a little bit, but I just want to say that I can clearly hear and understand that you fully complied with the terms of both your criminal and administrative probation, and you have further committed to a rehabilitative path and practicing a sober lifestyle while continuing to make rehabilitation a priority. There's no question for me in my mind that you have presented your thoughtful words in that aspect. What I would like to focus my question on is getting back to your reason for being here, which is your petition for modification of probation. I am trying to gain clarity on the optional terms you're seeking that might serve to modify your probation. So I think your attorney was going to help with that. And so I just want to make sure we return to that. So I'm clear for the time that we've spent with you today to clearly hear that in our side of the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will jump in. In particular, the optional terms, there are specific terms such as the supervised practice, as well as the testing, as well as the cost for the probation. And so more specifically, the supervised practice, the abstinence from controlled substances and submitting to biological fluid testing and samples, as well as the abstinence from use of alcohol and submitting to biological fluid testing and samples, as well as the reimbursement of probation program in particular.
Thank you. That answers my question. I appreciate it. And if, Doctor, if you wanted to add something to that, that's fine. But I believe my question has been answered.
I can maybe give you a kind of a short, like Cliff Note version, if you like. So for supervision, I think that would be help me be a better candidate in the field. It would also remove the trouble of having to have an LMFT supervisor when an LMFT supervisor is not always present or willing. And so it would make me a better candidate to pursue jobs that I'm best at. And right now I am serving in a private practice model that I'm equipped and I'm qualified. But to really help me advance professionally, I think that, and help the field as well, I think that it would be really helpful to have that removed. For testing, given the cost of supervision and testing, I think a full-time job that I'm most qualified for would be in the field, would help pay for those things. But if they serve as a barrier to me getting gainful employment, then it's kind of counterproductive. As well, if I've never provided any negative tests or any barriers, I think that would be questionable to having testing remain. And I have reviewed what I learned and how I would implement that and how I have implemented it during tolling in terms of alcohol consumption. For therapy, I would absolutely love to be able to go back to my original therapist. I value the relationship that I have with Essie, which is my probation therapist, and I think that we have our own relationship therapeutically. But there's just something about having your original therapist. And this is not a situation where that person retired or passed away. I had to switch up and adjust to probationary terms, which I did. However, I would absolutely love to go back to my original therapist and continue therapy. And so to have that removed would be really helpful overall when it comes to just confidence and continuing to rehabilitate. Again, I think that it's a fluid process. As well as, and you might feel leery about this one, but removing alcohol, abstaining from alcohol. I would like to have more autonomy. I would like to have more trust. I would like to be trusted as I have in these other sectors of my life. And again, I have more years as a safe person than I have unsafe practicing in the clinical realm. I don't know if there's any other optional blends, but those are like the primary. And so I hope that that gave some clarity.
I appreciate your words. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Walker. Ms. Crawford, anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Park, anything further?
Your Honor, I have one question.
Okay.
Dr. Perosi, excuse me. Will you ever get behind the wheel of a car ever again after drinking?
No, no. I've learned my lesson. I know. And at this point, I believe I have way too much to lose. And I've reevaluated, and I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself, but reevaluated just my circumstances and my approach to self-care when it comes to alcohol use. And not just that, but to also use resources available such as Uber and Lyft, which I have done in the past. So this time was different. And so, no, the short answer is no, I won't. And I have not, too.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you.
Further, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Park. Dr. Perosi, I'm sure Ms. Park has explained this to you, but the board will go into closed session for deliberations. You won't get an answer today, but you'll be notified of the board's decision at a date in the future, okay?
Thank you.
All right. With that, the matter is submitted, record is closed, and we are off the record in this matter. Dr. Perosi, best of luck to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Temple, I have 131.
Yes, Your Honor.
And our page count?
100 pages, Your Honor.
100. All right, thank you. Mr. Jones, do you want to go ahead and begin Ms. Gant's hearing?
No, Your Honor, we need to take a lunch break for our staff. So we're gonna recess for an hour. We'll come back at 2:30.
All right.
Thank you.
Can somebody let
Hold on,
Ms.
I'm
Gant-
sorry, wait 1 second. It may be unfair. We also have staff that we have to break. Yeah. So yeah, yeah. So no, we need you to break for an hour, Your Honor. So we'll be back at 2:30.
All right, and then for scheduling purposes, in terms of deliberations, is it your intention to try and do that today, or do you want to do that in the morning?
Yes, we're going to do that today after the final petitioner.
Okay. So we'll see everybody back then at 2:30. Can someone let Ms. Gant know that that's what we're doing?
Yeah, we'll take care of that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll see everybody at 2:30.